Good morning, everyone. Today is Friday, November 14th, and this is the November Ways and Means meeting. And let's rise and recite the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Are there any additions or changes to the agenda?
Yes, under item 10 for the Deputy Administrator Human Resources Director, just wanted to clarify one of the items, Controller's Office, it says reclassification without economic changes. It's really just a title change for the Communications Director. And then second, we are removing the Finance Director monthly report, item 11B, financial report.
All right. Anything else?
No, that should cover it.
All right, do we have an approval of the agenda? Moved and supported. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposition? All right. And approval of the October 10th meeting minutes. Okay. Okay. Any discussion on the minutes? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposition? All right, moving on to item number 5, limited public comment. You have 3 minutes. Please step to the podium, state your name, your location, a generalization if you don't mind.
Good morning. My name is Scott Smith, and I want to talk about the planning and zoning in the county and for the townships. I'm a resident of the village of Sunfield and a member of the Sunfield Village Council. I also attend the monthly Sunfield Township meetings. My main concern today is the proposed decision to end planning and zoning and its adverse effect on the townships in Eaton County. Although I have no authority to speak on behalf of Sunfield Township or any of the other townships in the county, after attending many of Sunfield's Township's meetings and listening to their board, it's very apparent that they are not prepared to take over planning and zoning by December 31st. And I have no doubt that if not all of the other townships are probably in the same position. It is apparent the County Planning Commission and its representative committees have been facing serious budget issues for some time now. Unfortunately, the news that planning and zoning will no longer be handled by the county is fairly new information to the townships, and most of them have only met for approximately 3 meetings since the August meeting held here at the county for the townships. I know, although there are no funds budgeted for planning and zoning in the current approved county budget, it is definitely in the best interest of all county residents to try and continue planning and zoning until the townships have proper time to set up either their own individual planning and zoning or to work jointly to provide the service. At the November 5th Public Works and Human Services Committee meeting, Chris Garrison mentioned that planning and zoning or construction codes has brought in approximately $25,000 in revenues since October 1st. At the same meeting, Commissioner Mott mentioned that there are specific funds that were originally set aside for the future revision of the current master plan, and these funds will no longer be used if planning and zoning is ultimately repealed. Further, it was stated that Claudine is to be the contact person on zoning issues, yet in the same meeting she mentioned that Jason Ball, I think was his name, is the consultant on the master plan revisions, that he's agreed to meet with the townships. But if the county will no longer need to revise the master plan, then to save the county additional funds, any contract or agreement that they have with Mr. Ball, if at all possible, seems like should be terminated. It would not only be informative, but also helpful for all the parties involved to know what these aforementioned master plan revision funds are. And I trust that the Ways and Means Committee can possibly reveal what that amount today is to the public at this meeting. Finally, the numbers given for the continuation of zoning and planning or approximately $15,000 to $16,000 a month. It seems only logical that the county could use the two above-mentioned funding sources to continue planning and zoning until perhaps August 31st, 2026. This extension should allow the townships ample time to get planning and zoning in place so there will not be a lack of this very useful and important service for the county residents. Thank you very much.
Anyone else? All right, seeing none, there will be a second opportunity at the end of the meeting. And before we go any further, I'd like to welcome Commissioner for District 1, Andy Shaver. Welcome. Thank you. All right, on to item number 6, Equalization and Property Description Director. Good morning, Tim.
Good morning. We got the apportionment report, which is a required report this time of year. After all the election information is compiled, there was quite a few elections that came last minute as well. We did analyze those. Looks like there was no actual changes as far as this year goes. We had like Waverly Schools, and I'm still waiting to get those reports from the county clerk. Waverly Schools had a sinking fund. Charlotte had some renewals. So there was quite a few reports to review, which makes it difficult, obviously, because it affects that report directly. Going over this report, the Eaton County Apportionment Report for 2025. We had the Eaton County allocated is at 5.2023. Extra voted comes out to 4.3660. Bellevue Township's 0.7942. Benton Township 0.8681. Brookfield Township's 0.7745. Carmel Township's 0.7835. Chester's 0.8488. Delta's 4.9287 with the extra vote of 1.9896. Eaton Township does not collect a millage. They can collect a millage, but they've decided not to again this year. Eaton Rapids Township is 0.8074. Hamlin Township is 0.8284. Calamo's 0.7738. Oneida is 0.8748. Roxanne is 0.8130. Sunfield is 0.8683. Vermontville is 0.8031. Walton is 0.7936. Windsor is 3.8. City of Charlotte is 14.0606. Eaton Rapids is 8.222. Grand Ledge is 11.2506. Lansing is 19.4400. Olivet is 13.9352. Potterville is 11.3336. And then you had the villages as well. Going on to the library districts, Charlotte DDA is 1.2158. The Grand Ledge District Emergency Services is 4.8886. Library is 1.5590 for CATA, or the CDL up there in Lansing area. Charlotta's library is 1.3644. Delta's is 1.00. Eaton Rapids library is 0.9771. Grand Ledge library is 1.1923. Mulliken library is 0.8102. Potterville is 0.4436. Sunfield is 0.9815. Windsor's library is 0.7916. The Airport Authority is 0.6990, and then the Eaton Transit is 1.5586. Didn't have many changes in the schools. Most of those are renewals. The Waverly Schools, the Old Harmless is slowly going down. So that supplemental rate is down to 1.8842. And then the community college, we did have a late change on that. For the Lansing Community College, we had a 4029 that was revised. That's 3.7284. And then you can see the rest for the ISDs. Is there any questions on this report?
Go ahead, Commissioner Wright.
When I see the CATA one on here, that's the people who live in the city of Lansing, but on the west side of Waverly, is that correct? Because now that it's been defeated in Delta Township, the CATA, that's, so the Lansing people in Eaton on the west side of Waverly, they'll still pay their CATA, right?
Yeah, they'll still have to pay their CATA.
Okay, so we're gonna continue to still see CATA on your reports because you collect it?
Yeah, it's still collected on the city Lansing parcels in Eaton County. So they're still gonna be double hit, even though that millage did not pass, because that just affected the Delta Township residents. That doesn't affect the residents that are in the city Lansing for Eaton County. So that's been going on for years and years.
So,
So like if you live in city Lansing on the Eaton County side, you can use the CATA bus transportation or the E-Tran, either one.
and the Delta stops after the holidays. So, for CATA usage.
For CATA usage? Yeah, I wasn't aware of that.
Thank you.
And this report needs to be moved to the full board.
All right. Okay.
Support.
Moved and supported. Any discussion? Tim, before we vote, you said there was a change in the Lansing Community College?
Yeah, I think I did update that. I'll have to double check on that. But the Lansing Community College did make a mistake on their 4029, and so they had to revise that. So I'll have to double check on that, make sure the report is correct.
Okay.
Because we just found out that the 4029 was revised in October, so, and we didn't get the proper form in time, but I think that is correct now.
So what are the implications to the county for that? Any?
Well, we just have to make sure that the tax rate was calculated properly on the tax bills, so it doesn't really affect the county's budget at all.
All right. That's reassuring. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Any other questions, discussion? All right. All those in favor of passing the resolution, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, the motion is carried. What's next?
Okay, we have a resolution. I have not prepared a resolution yet because I'm still working on getting all the information from the local jurisdictions as far as getting signatures going on that. It does take some time, and there was quite a few questions on the designated assessor that was done in 2020 originally under PA 660 of 2018. And the signatures that I've gotten so far are from Oneida Township. We had approval, Eaton Rapids Township, Chester Township, Eaton Rapids City, City of Olivet, Calamo Township, Roxanne Township, and Walton Township.
Okay. So do we continue forward with this resolution?
Yeah, even though it's got partial signatures, you would just move it knowing that between now and the full board, there would be an amendment. And for some reason, if we don't have all the signatures by then, we can discuss what to do. But this is kind of, I don't want to say pro forma, but it's a backup situation to help cover the townships in case that they need to call on Tim to step in as their designated assessor. So I don't see any reason we wouldn't move it to the full board. Do you, Tim?
No, I don't think so at this point. It could be delayed. I looked at it last time we did it, we didn't get all the signatures until March, so.
Yeah. So we'll see, we'll give you an update at the full board, but I don't see any reason not to move it.
All right. Okay. So do we have a motion to approve this resolution?
I make a motion, Tim.
Moved and supported. Any discussion on it? All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Any opposition? All right, there you go, Tim.
Okay.
You're on the hook for more work now.
Yep. And then we've been working on a new, person to take over the remonumentation, program due to the fact that Ron Lester is gonna be retiring now. And we sent out some RFP requests, through Logan and worked pretty hard on that. So he did a good job, it's like getting that set up. And we had 2 proposals, one from Ryan Miller, and then the other one was from Geodetic. And we looked at the contract proposals that we did get. It was a little bit higher than our previous contract under Ron Lester. One was at $150 an hour, and the other was $170 an hour. So we're leaning towards Ryan Miller, who's a local surveyor. And then I set up a tentative contract. I don't know if anybody's had a chance to take a look at that contract.
All right.
Ryan Miller is a local surveyor in the area. He's been working on the Remon program for quite a long time through the existing contract as one of the surveyors. The Geodetic guys is pretty good as well, but we decided after talking to Ryan and through our committee that seems like that would be a good direction to go.
All right, well, we'll trust you on that.
Is there any questions about Ryan's abilities to do the job?
Commissioner Holmes?
Yeah, it's not necessarily about Ryan, but I noticed in here, is it a fact that the state tells the county what they have to do to accomplish according to PA 1990, number 345?
Uh-huh.
That's a fact, or is it just read that way under?
What's that?
Does it read that way, or is that actually the way it is? Where this,
Yeah, I mean, you have to follow certain guidelines to do it. You do have to be a certified surveyor to do the program. And he's got quite a bit of experience. I guess the IT department has worked with him for, and they're pretty impressed with the work, and we've heard a lot of good things about him.
right. My question wasn't so much about Ryan, all of that was what was asked, but about the fact that the county has to accomplish what the state tells them as far as when it's reading in the second paragraph on page 17 of our packet,
Uh-huh.
where it says approved or initiated by the State Survey Remonumentation Commission.
That is correct. So the report that's done to submit for the grant funding requires all of the conditions of that to be met in order for us to receive the grant funding.
Okay, yeah, just making sure it reads that way, and that's the way it was.
Yes.
Thinking of unfunded mandates in my back of my head here.
Yeah. It's all
Okay.
kind of covered by grant funds, basically.
Yeah, okay, thank you so much.
Commissioner Barber, do you have a comment?
Hey, Tim, how many points does he do a year?
How many points?
Yeah, I mean, he's doing this monetization, right?
Yeah.
So how many does he do a year? Or on the average, how many have you had him do before?
I can't remember the exact number on that, because it depends on the grant, and the grant fluctuates from year to year, basically.
So the remonumentation grant for 2024, our final report recorded that we had 56 corners that were reviewed for 2024, and that is a calendar year grant.
Okay, and
So
then
it's pretty similar year over year. It's about 55 every year.
what percentage do we verify?
Those are all the ones that are verified
By the surveyor?
but by the surveyors, yes.
How many do we verify?
There's none that are verified outside of.
So we pay an individual to go out and do this, and there's no oversight?
They are their own, it's a peer review committee.
That goes out and verifies these?
Yes, and
Okay.
that is based on state requirements and the grant application requirements as well.
Yeah,
There's several separate surveyors that will survey the same site,
Okay,
and then they do a review every quarter. And that review meeting then says this is actually finalized.
The person that runs the program does oversee it, so it's.
so there is oversight.
There is some oversight.
Yeah, that's my point is I don't want to be paying somebody $150 an hour
Yeah.
to go out and do 56 points, and then nobody spot checks, right? Plain simple. We pay for something, we got to verify it's done.
Well, you're just paying $150 an hour for the person to oversee the program. He's not the one that's actually doing the survey.
Okay, but I just want somebody verifying that it's being done, just like I want to verify that you're doing your job.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
If I could add to that, so basically the process, as I know it, is there's a peer review process that happens usually in January, February every year. There's a group of surveyors that get together with the Remind coordinator. That's who Tim is recommending to select for 1 calendar year. That's the representative for the county that administers the remonumentation program for the next fiscal year. The county has to administer and prepare a remonumentation plan that's submitted to the state of Michigan. That's essentially the framework in which the county has to operate for remonumentation for that calendar year or into the future. That essentially peer review process, once those, in the past, that 53 points or whatever it was that are administered and collected, there's a peer review process that happens at the end of the year that they all get together, they vet each other's work, and then the county Remind representative then submits that work as a final product to the state of Michigan. So just to provide a little bit of clarity of how that works.
Eric, would you also just talk a little bit about your involvement and the different activity that we did this year in preparing for the RFP and just kind of like a vision going forward as well that Eric and Logan worked on?
Sure. Actually, John Merrick and Ivan Christopher, your 2 GIS coordinators for Eaton County here, they spent quite a bit of time of kind of revamping the county's remonumentation plan going forward. So they made some changes to that. Basically, the marquee changes of that were additional deliverables back to the county. So to simplify it is we want more precision data that can be collected through the Remon program that can be used internally to help all departments basically shore up and basically better define our core mapping that's used internally here. So our parcel boundaries, our road center lines, our law, fire, EMS district boundaries, they all depend on that section corner that's part of that remonumentation plan. So in the past, part of the delivery through Remon of the dollars that you all are funding, we weren't getting that precision data. So what that did is that forced us to go back out into the field and essentially do a duplication of effort to collect that precision data. That way we can move forward with our internal mapping initiatives here. So part of that remonumentation update that we did, we're going to require that that data gets delivered. That way we create efficiencies in dollars and in time savings. So kudos to those 2. They put a lot of work into that, and that'll be something that we work with that new county representative.
And I'm just curious, how many years did we use Lester prior to this? This is the first time we've done
Since the beginning.
since the beginning.
I think before my time here.
Yeah, so this has been a different process that we've taken this time. And the committee making the recommendation, it's coming from equalization, but tech services and the controller's office all sat in to help kind of develop that model moving forward. So
I think the program started around 1980, as I recall.
yeah.
So it's been a long time.
All right. So we have a resolution before us.
And just to let you know, we are almost done with the initial phase of the remonumentation program. So most of the corners now have been checked. I think we're getting pretty close to going through as far as going through that first phase. Now we're getting into the second phase as far as GPS and everything. So it should be a lot easier the second time around and be able to get more done.
Well, that was my question for you, Tim, is how much longer? I mean, does remonumentation ever end?
I mean, it can, but there's advantages to making sure, making sure all the corners haven't moved. In some instances, the posts get knocked out for various reasons. Equipment gets in the way and then it knocks something out. So then they have to reposition that corner post basically. And then we get into GPSing, which helps the IT department quite a bit.
Okay. And then once that gets done, then the next technological advance comes along and we start all over again.
That's true.
All right. Do we have a motion to approve this resolution? We have it already? All right. It was a long discussion. All right. Any other questions or concerns, comments?
I only have a motion from.
Okay, we did not have a second.
Second.
Okay, second from Jean. Thank you, Jeannie. All right, now any discussion, concerns, comments, any more? All right, all those in favor of the approval say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? All right, thank you, Tim. Tim, I got a question before you go.
Yeah.
We've been hearing a lot about these data centers that are coming into neighborhoods and taking up a lot of space, big footprint. Before we have that coming to Eaton County, has anyone looked into how that affects the surrounding property values?
Yeah, they've considered that. I don't think we haven't really had a situation where there's a large data center come into the county yet, but there's been some studies on that. Typically, you want to have the zoning situation where that data center is in an industrial area, so it's not going to negatively affect the residential properties in that particular area. I know Delta does a good job of making sure that all the large industrials is in a certain sector of the county, or the township, I want to say, so it doesn't negatively impact the residential market.
All right,
But it does bring in quite a few jobs. So, there's some positives as far as that goes as well.
So I can speak a little bit, not Eaton County specific, but things that communities have grappled with in other parts of the country, because different states are having to deal with this. So if a data center gets set up, it's a question of how they're going to power it. So some facilities will use like natural gas generators, but the amount needed for that facility, the exhaust from it, can be very impactful to neighbors if there's not a zoning protection set up to prevent it from butting up directly against a farm. Another piece is water consumption. So the facilities require a significant amount of water in order to be able to keep everything cool. And then the third piece is a state issue, but how do you transfer the demand of electricity into your ratepayer system? So in states that don't have a good framework set up, data centers require a lot of electricity, so that can require an infrastructure build out. And if it's not set up in a way to where the provider putting the center in shoulders the burden of that, that gets shifted to all the ratepayers in the vicinity in the area. So I know Georgia's been wrestling with this quite a bit, and I believe Tennessee had one where to avoid the footprint of electricity, they used the gas generators, but then it was, the fumes were setting the neighbors in a bad position. So it's certainly something to keep in mind. These types of centers didn't exist 15 years ago, so it's kind of a new thing that people have to be on the lookout for.
all right. Thank you, Ben, and thank you, Tim.
Yeah, that's part of the problem, is you got to have a lot of power generation to run something that big. So that you have to have some pretty big, as far as like a utility has to have the local power to run something like that.
All right.
I know up in NIDA, they have a pretty big power generation plant, and then Consumers is working on developing something in the Windsor Township area as well.
All right, thank you.
Welcome.
Moving on to item number 7, FOIA update.
So this is just an update that we've been trying to provide to let the board know what our FOIA requests are. And we've talked about it before. We do have a FOIA coordinator where we didn't before. She manages all of the FOIAs that come in. sends information requests to the departments, and then submits the FOIAs back out. The report that shows here, what she likes to do is show from one year to the next, how many FOIAs we've received, if they've increased or decreased. So I will note that they have decreased from 2024 to 2025, but I will also tell you that the extent of the research that departments are having to do has increased based on the type of requests that we get. So there's a lot more work that goes into the FOIAs. And having that coordinator has worked very well for departments. One of the things that we've talked about is ensuring that we have a backup plan so departments aren't then inundated with managing their own FOIAs if something were to happen. And again, that's succession planning that we've been trying to do within every department. It's a great program that we have the way it's set up, but it is a very demanding job.
All right.
Can I share one thing too? So part of that FOIA process is the police footage camera requests. And in that, the person has to sit, watch the footage, and then go through and omit anything that's protected under law. And if you have 3 or 4 deputies on one site, that's 3 vehicle cams, 3 body cams. So the one request, when you translate that into the amount of time, very different than just like, can I get a copy of somebody's calendar, right? So to Connie's point. And then we tried to see if there were any vendors out there just as backup for us, because as we took on that responsibility, having a FOIA coordinator, clerks and the sheriff's department haven't had to do that. But if for some reason our FOIA coordinator's sick or we were to lose that position, so we did put feelers out there to see if there were vendors that we could hire temporarily to help with the video pieces, and we've been unsuccessful up to this point. And we just identify it, like Connie said, this is one of those areas where redundancy is really important, because a loss of that personnel will shift a lot of work back into departments. So just something that we're thinking about.
Just mentioned dispatch and the work that they have to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, dispatch, we just talked to Director Cunningham last week, I think, or the week before, about the FOIA, maybe it was this week.
Yeah, I think it was.
Time flies. We talked to her, and when they receive requests, so Grace will send them, they have a lot of redaction that they have to do on the 911 calls themselves. So there's a lot of work that I just want to say departments still have to put into FOIA requests. It's pretty demanding.
All right, thank you. Any questions? Yes, Commissioner Wright.
So, when state police come to a situation, and they have their body cameras, do they go through Grace and still on a FOIA?
No, that goes through the department that has the body cam footage.
Okay, so goes back basically to the state police to answer?
For state police, they would be the ones that provided their body cam footage.
Okay, so
On
they
that.
would do that.
But for court purposes, we do have backups of that, because that ends up going to the public defender's office, the prosecutor's office, and then it's maintained. So while it's not a FOIA expense, the county does end up sometimes paying 2 to 3 times to store that across operations. But those are not redacted. Those are files for the court process.
Okay, and from what my memory is for new people, I think when we went to a FOIA coordinator, the staff person that we have came from Ingham County, so they did have some experience.
A lot of experience, and it was not Ingham, it was City of Lansing, and had also worked for the state of Michigan, but had been doing all of the redactions, knew the software. We were extremely lucky to do that, and if she were to retire, more than likely we would want to utilize her to go through a process to vet somebody else for the position, just based on her qualifications. Phenomenal.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none. We will move on to item number 8. Technology Services Director. Eric, welcome again.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to give an update on the Tri-County Regional Planning Commission aerial imagery acquisition program that we've been working on for the last few months. We are in the last final stage of that. Your GIS staff are QA and QCing the final imagery as of this morning. We're hopeful to have that project, everything vetted and reviewed over the weekend, and then next week give our final stamp of approval. And then we're very hopeful to get final delivery of that imagery before Thanksgiving. It's quite an aggressive timetable for the vendor, but we do want to get that imagery in-house as soon as possible to use for our own internal and public applications. Any questions about that? Okay. Want to give an update on our current county phone system. We did experience an extended outage through AT&T last month. Our phone services were down to the external for about 5 days, possibly 6 days. There was a breakdown of internal communications within that vendor. We weren't able to get support on that. We were able to patch things as best as we could to get, core base operations up and going, but we were crippled a little bit for phone communications. Looked at those contracts. It's been something that we've been looking at for a while now. We are currently under contract with that vendor until March of 2026. We've already started sourcing a replacement vendor for that, another solution. We're successful in that. Unfortunately, there is a penalty clause to end that contract early, and just given the timeline of current projects that we're working on, it's going to be our best interest to stay on that contract until March of 2026, and then we will likely be transitioning to another vendor, both for customer service and support, as well as there should be a monetary cost savings moving to this vendor as well. And part of that solution, we will finally be migrating to an e-faxing solution, getting rid of our antiquated analog faxing solutions that we have here at the county. And we've already started working with multiple county departments and sourcing if faxing is still a viable and necessary solution for their operations. And we've already had a few departments say, yeah, that antiquated communication means can go, which would be another reduction in operating costs for the county. Any questions about that? Quick update too, last month I talked about the state of Michigan bringing in a new data circuit for circuit court probation and court operations. Your IT staff have worked side by side with the state of Michigan over the last 30 days to get that circuit installed. I believe it's the 17th of this month, which would be Monday, I believe, next week. That circuit is supposed to be fired up, moved over. The court operations will be moved over. There'll be I'm going to estimate about a 30-minute outage window for that. It's a budget neutral solution for the county. It's 100% state initiative, but it did require some IT time, internal IT time to make that transition happen for them. Any questions about that? Okay. Part of our projects for this current fiscal year, we replaced the UPS, the uninterrupted power supply in our jail facility. This is that powers our data center in the jail. That was scheduled to be replaced. It was part of a planned project. IT staff performed that on Monday of this week. That took networking capabilities down in the jail for approximately 15 to 20 minutes. The jail went into their contingency mode for communication operation internally. That project went off without a hitch, and that expenditure has been made in the budget already. Any questions about that? Okay. Moving on to capital improvement plan projects that we have. Had conversations with Deputy Controller Dawson last week about some potential savings that we had occurred through last year's budget. That'll be something that will come to you probably in the coming months of asking for rollover funds for specifically our printer project here at the county. We have about $140,000 financial liability of printer replacements here at the county. Departments, we've worked with departments, we're doing a good job of paring down printers that are necessary, identifying printers that have met their life cycle, and we have a plan in place to start that replacement cycle now that we're kind of all falling into our new normal as departments have pared down and structural changes, operational changes. We have a good idea of what needs to go forward. That is a project that was identified and approved in your capital improvement plan going forward. So we will be working hard to make those obligations and make that project move forward as soon as we can. Any questions about that?
Doing good, Eric. Nobody's questioning you.
All right.
I would note one other thing on the rollover costs. So during the last budget year, obviously, Eric and his team wouldn't have known what was going to happen into the budget. So they held back doing a lot of projects that, you know, if we didn't know what our footprint was going to look like, he didn't want to expend the funds. So that's what you'll see next month when he presents those requests.
And I'll add to, we did adopt a capital improvement plan in April, but then what we actually did in the budget did scale back some of those projects. So when we get to the printer piece, that was something that we looked at in April and had adopted it tentatively as part of the CIP, but then pulled back for the budget process purposes. So it shouldn't, just wanted to note that piece, that whether we do it now, do it next year, do it all at once, do it piecemeal, it's just, there are gonna be costs and benefits associated with how we do that, but my understanding is we're looking at printers that are over 7 years old and they're quickly phasing out of their useful life, so action will need to be taken, and just a matter of how we get there will be what we talk about.
Also part of a future capital improvement plan addition is looking at courtroom technology. There's a tremendous amount of courtroom technology that has been added and changed. A lot of it was added during our COVID timeframe to basically accommodate, you know, social distancing and physical distancing. That we added a lot of monitors and technology in there. That stuff is aging, so we're working with a vendor now to kind of source and do an inventory of the data, or not the data, but the hardware and infrastructure that we have in those spaces. They've actually invited court administration and IT to take a site visit to courts in Wayne County later next month, and to start developing a plan of, you know, what other courts are doing for future, you know, courtroom technology. That includes the audio, the video, and even the court recording software that others are using. All stuff that we have here that is an aging infrastructure. Start planning a capital improvement plan specifically for those targeted sectors of operation here. So that'll be a good project. We're excited to present, you know, that to you in future budgets, but it is, just wanted to make everybody aware that it is something we are working on, and realize that those are costs that aren't currently in a capital improvement plan that you've seen before. And then the last thing I had was, and if Nathan wants to come up and talk about it, amazing, but just an update on our MCT project that we had. That hardware was funded through your central dispatch millage. That includes updated computers, modems, docking stations, and installation of that. The last leg of that project was for Delta Township, and as well as New Central Command. So I believe there's a total of, I'm gonna say 22 to 23 units that were identified in that project. And I believe all but 2 of them have been completed, installed, and in operation out since we last met. So if you wanted any, okay. So.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
To talk a little bit about the process, Nathan is the one that's like in the trenches, right?
absolutely. He's the mastermind of all this.
Good morning, Nathan.
Morning. So yeah, this is our, at least I think our third kind of iteration of changing over all the technology. And we work with each department because every department's vehicles are different on the law enforcement side of things. So some departments are a little easier if they have a commonality of vehicle. So for instance, at Charlotte, they only use Tahoes. Very simple. If you have other departments that have multiple different versions, a Charger is very different than a Suburban. And then, for instance, at Delta, we have a Waymaster. his equipment is in the cab, not in the back of the vehicle anymore. So there's just a lot that goes into the project. But yeah, they're all swapped out now and should be good for several years of life. I also want to point out we're on 5G now as well, which makes a huge difference to offloading data. They're not sucking to a star anymore. We got a garden hose finally. You guys have any questions?
Yes, go ahead, Commissioner Moudry.
Nathan, do we have any process that we sell off this equipment that's being replaced? Is there a garage sale?
Nope, there is not. Once it comes out of a vehicle, then it gets put usually into an office where it doesn't have a critical responsibility anymore. Because once the county makes the investment with, taxpayer money, we want to get all the life we possibly can.
I don't mean
So.
exactly for the vehicles, but I mean for the whole office complex when we replace technology, printers, et cetera.
Okay, no, we actually use a company now that we're working with at Eric. We just switched to that comes in and takes the equipment for us, and it goes to be recycled appropriately. No.
Put your signs away, Mark.
Their printers are newer than mine.
I get you. I said Lori would
And some
like
don't
it.
have printers.
All right, any other questions for Nate? All right, thank you, sir. All right, moving on to item number 9, Communications Director.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Logan.
You're going to hear from me a couple more times later in the meeting, so I'll try and be a little succinct here. As we talked about the last couple of months, let me scroll down here, with AudioEye, that's AudioEye Severity Matrix, which you can see here on the screen or in your packet, that looks to see what is repeating in terms of errors or ADA misses, and then that tries to automatically fix that, and it ranks it by severity so that I can go through and actually look and see what is severely broken or missing. So that has actually become a tool for me to also identify where departments or offices are entering new information or updates to specific pages. Otherwise, I kind of am going in blind when I'm looking to update that or make sure that there aren't any broken links and such, and to align with where those errors might be. So before going in blind, or when departments would reach out directly to me to make those edits. So I've started to make substantial changes to several pages, and I'm using AudioEye secondarily to help me identify where those are and where repeating errors are happening. So that has been a secondary tool with this software that I'm very happy has saved me quite a bit of time. In terms of the website in general, we have not seen, I mean, we continue to see this pretty much the same amounts. We're kind of plateauing in usage other than spikes in times of like looking at election results and stuff like that. But we'll continue to strive to eliminate those JavaScript errors, outdated information, broken links, and in terms of the website as well, with a privacy policy and other things, which I'll touch on later in this meeting as well. Social media, we have dipped in terms of reach and views, other than some specific posts around press releases, specific updates, events, or when other departments and offices ask to share information via our platform. My goal is to find an appropriate balance in terms of maintaining a presence online and growing that presence. But it's not my top priority at this moment in terms of critical communications that we're doing. Any press release, any information we throw out, I try to throw out as accurately and quickly as possible. But I need to find a better balance. I will acknowledge that, trying to up our engagement as much as possible and get information out the door. And so that's something I need to work on. And I think we'll touch on that later on in the meeting as well on another topic. Speaking of social media, you may have seen, or on the website, in a presser we did in coordination with the Eaton County Land Bank Authority and the City of Eaton Rapids. The Land Bank Authority now has acquired the Horner Mill site. And the treasurer is here if he wants to speak a little bit to it, but we threw that out last minute, and there was a couple more specific information I want to get out, which will going out later this afternoon, as well as in the newsletter that we should have included in that. But the Land Bank Authority purchased that for $10, and the previous owner is to pay a delinquent tax back of about $21,000, which goes back into the delinquent tax fund. They also had to pay maintenance fees back to Eaton Rapids City, and the Land Bank Authority, in cooperation with the city of Eaton Rapids, is working to get more state and federal funding to actually do the work of the development and demolition. So stay tuned for more information on that. But did I get that? Is that right? We're good?
Our treasurer will come forward and add to that.
Yes, hi. Yes, Logan, that is correct. That was an agreement that was a long time coming, started by my predecessor, Bob Robinson. And we are working with, in partnership with the city of Eaton Rapids and township residents to find the best use of the property. And that's probably the best thing we have going for us, is that there's a lot of community support to do something with the site. But yes, that covered all the main points. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Darius, appreciate it.
All right, a couple more things. You will see later today in the news about veteran services. There's been a lot of coverage of that. I mean, the holiday was here. We were having some trouble with the Michigan Veterans Affairs Agency in terms of the grant funding that we have. What can we be reimbursed with via that? We've gotten more, after they did a legal review, we got more feedback from them on some of those changes that the state made may be actually unenforceable, so that may work in our benefit, but we're still reviewing what that's going to look like, which will inevitably cause Claudine to have to do a lot more work. But I wanted to update you guys on that. You'll see more information on that later today as well. And then the last thing I wanted to elevate a bit here is working with Emergency Management Office. They've opened the survey to the public for their strategic plan for fiscal year 2025-26. That is open and online. They're going to do a big PR push for that as well. So I encourage anybody in the public as well as on this board to review that strategic plan, take that survey. And you will hear from me later as well, but any
That,
questions?
Survey is found where?
Right on our homepage.
Okay.
And I would like to give an opportunity for an update, because we've got those federal direct congressional distribution requests that we put through Barrett's office. And so I know that the budget just passed, so we
Yes.
really, but if you want to just.
Yeah. So I have spoken with Congressman Barrett's office staff on our effort to get security funding, which was for the new camera system, emergency security locks, cybersecurity, which was a main part of that ask as well, security bollards and tint on the windows, a few other items, about $500,000. It's not dead in the water, but it's also, we don't know yet what's going to happen. The federal government's now funded through the end of January, and so it was going through committee when the government shutdown happened, and so now, when I have more information, I will give you more information, but we will see. We're also working with Congressman Barrett's office on a few other things, so stay tuned for that. I know that's kind of a non-update, but we're not dead in the water yet, is what I've been reassured. But also, you can really see the stress in their eyes when you talk to them, so.
Any questions for Logan? All right. Anything else, sir?
That concludes my report for now.
All right, thank you very much. Item number 10, Deputy Administrator, Human Resources Director. Good morning, Ben.
Good morning, Chair. Thank you, everybody. Glad to be here. We'll start out with the positions update that you have before you today. We do have some good news. So we lost a number of deputies after the public safety millage had passed. Happy to report to date, we've had 5 return, so 2 just returned in the last month, so. Okay. It didn't pass. Oh, my gosh, I'm sorry, yeah, when it failed. Thank you. Anyway, when there was an outcome, but it just speaks to the fact that people do want to work at Eaton County, and I think your budget provided stability that you've been able to attract some of that talent back after they had already gone to other communities, already landed jobs. They made the decision to return. So I think that speaks a lot to the quality of our sheriff's department and the work you've done to preserve benefits and pay that keeps us more competitive than we had been. Next, the prosecutor was able to secure an assistant prosecuting attorney, which is very exciting. They'll be starting on December 1st. In terms of recommendations within the report here, there are 2 positions we're recommending. Public safety telecommunicator, and then an assistant public defender to be reauthorized for posting and filling in future cycles. I'll also note, and this came up at the public safety, but the RAP program, which was a program funded through the jail, was eliminated in the state budget, which does create a gap of about $400,000 in funding with the sheriff's department. They're working on a comprehensive plan to present back, but I believe they're looking at position vacancies, trying to limit overtime and potential contractual opportunities with other communities to perhaps have inmates come from outside the county to the jail where they get a per day factor to try to make up that difference. Between that and the jail millage, we're confident that there's a path forward, especially in this year, but long-term, we'll just have to continue to assess what the state's budget effect will be for Eaton County. Hoping they'd bring it back. Yeah, it was a very successful and program statewide, and there's a lot of frustration. It got eliminated at the last minute.
Okay, Commissioner Barber.
You need to clarify what you mean by jail millage.
There was a jail millage that was put into effect that primarily paid for building the build-out that we had at the jail, increasing the capacity. But it also had an allowance for personnel, so it can be used to help pay for that. The jail millage debt itself is going to be fully paid, and there's residual over that we've been using to help fund positions. So that's the reference. That will expire, I believe, in 2026, last to be levied in that winter tax year.
Okay, any other questions? Commissioner Wright?
So Ben, if we had 5 return deputies, where did they go to work when they came back?
So, good question. So Delta is currently, I want to say all 5 are actually in Delta. So currently, that contract is only down 2 deputies and a detective out of the full contracted rate.
Okay, so we were short that many, and now we're decreasing the amount that we're short on that contract, right? Because the 5 came back?
Yep, correct. And the way that contract's built out and every police services contract we're presenting, because we're in discussions with other communities about the possibility of contracting on a smaller scale, it's based on cost. So while we budgeted for 38 filled, if we've got 3 months that 5 or 3 are vacant, the community gets a credit back at the reconciliation that we do in March. So yeah, it will all settle in March, but for now, Delta's paying as if they're gonna have 38 deputies, and for each month they don't, they'll get money back for next
Now,
year.
Ben, were they ones that
Next fiscal year.
voluntarily just left and went someplace else, and so now they've just resigned from there to come back here?
Yep.
Okay. Were they higher seniority people?
One of them was a sergeant, actually, so came back as a deputy because you can't promote directly into the command unit. And he had, I want to say, 15-plus years. I'd have to go back and check. And then quite a few of them were our newest batch that had just completed FTO. And the only reason they left was concerns, most union contracts, and ours are no exemption. It's usually, last in, first out if there's an actual layoff that gets called. And so, but they made the decision to come back, so that says something.
Good. I keep telling people we're really okay to work for.
Any other questions?
So with that, I'd ask a motion to move the 2 recommended positions.
Support.
Okay, moved and supported. Any other discussion, questions, comments? All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay. Next item.
So the next item is what Controller Sobey had clarified initially. So it's not a reclassification. Reclassifications as a policy, and we do have some newer commissioners, and I know when we went into this budget, we actually put a freeze on the normal reclassification process. But in the model we've had in place since 2014, every 2 years, any employee can say, I think I'm doing more work than I used to. And they can submit saying, these are the additional duties and then we have it evaluated by our third-party contractor, and they confirm if they think those duties require a pay increase, right? Due to the budget issues, we had put that on hold. We still allowed structural changes within offices, so if we restructured, that was allowed, and so you guys had approved one in the clerk's office. What we're proposing today is a title change and recognizing additional responsibilities that have been taken on by our communications director. So as we go through it, really highlighting at a high level, but the amount of work that Logan's been doing for grants, not just in grant management, like in helping write up proposals and then write up documents to secure funding. He's also become our point for advocating for state and federal funds to come into the county. Bank County, we were able to get $5 million to drop the price of that project. He's helped in kind of managing those agency agreements as well. So in recognition of that, we wanted to update his job title and add those additional responsibilities. Plus, he helps us sometimes like facilitate on the FOIA end, since he already has a relationship with all the departments about communications for media and external parties. A lot of those, when they come in from journalists, he'll help facilitate a solution for. So before you is not an economic change, it's just a recognition that Eaton County doesn't have the luxury to just have a communications director. We have a director of public and governmental affairs.
Not much else to add. We talked about this a few different months. I know several commissioners have advocated for me to try and figure out what this would look like. Thank you to Deputy Administrator and Controller Sobey. Did not know what to title myself, so thank you to the Controller for helping workshop that, and for Ben for helping me, align what I'm already doing, but also to try and find that balance as well, and also not, eliminate any of the responsibilities I already have.
It wasn't much of a speech, but that'll do for now. Yeah. Any questions, comments? All right, so we need to take action on this.
A motion and a second and a vote would be great.
Support.
Been supported. Any other comments? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Well, now you gotta go back and retitle your report.
I'll work on that.
All right, item C.
So item C is one of those pieces where it's a sheet of paper, but it represents a culmination of hours and hours of staff time and commissioner time working. Part of the financial stability of the county that you all have grappled with and taken up is there is no path forward for financial stability that doesn't include tackling the unfunded liability of the pension. There's just not. We live under the rules of MERS, and we have a sustainable pension now, but 84% of what we pay is for employees that have already retired and benefits that we can no longer bargain down, right? So with that in mind, we had negotiated on our Delta agreement $2 million from the township. We put $1 million in, so we matched that at 50%, and we did that as a deposit into the Sheriff Supervisors Union. We did $1 million from available funds within our MERS system into the non-union admin group. And we did this so that we could add 5 years of the amortization to the end. So in simple terms, it's almost like adding 5 years to your mortgage, right? So it's like a refinance, but not really, because pensions are far more complicated than that. But it just extends out the period of time by 5 years that we have to be 100% funded. The mandate to be funded by 2040 was set by the state in 2017. That was the framework that allowed that to go into effect. So you have the rates as they're budgeted in 25-26. You have the rates based on the impact of the cash injection we did up front, and then you have the rates after the 5-year extension, and then below I highlight the variance between those. I will note we also bargained our labor agreements right in the mix of this. So some groups got a 2% pension reduction, and that is built into this cost assessment. So that's really the net change of position from the beginning of that period to the end. So part of the reason we are putting money into MERS is time value of money needs to work for us rather than against us. The more assets we set aside into that as they begin earning and beating the market, that will reduce the amount of money the county has to contribute out of its active budget process each year. And the last thing I'd say too is the way that this is set up, we have to set aside double the assets for a retiree. So, and these are MERS rules, and it's, I would say, very conservative, not conservative in a political way, conservative in an actuarial way. So if we have a employee that's got $100,000 a year and that's the liability, and they think they're gonna live for 35 years, they map out what they think that cost is, and whatever that number is, they want you to have double that in assets in the current year. And that's why so much of what we pay goes towards that. In a 20-year viewpoint, as people start passing away and things just happen, demographics shift in time, MERS has to give that money back to us. So if we look at the county from a 30-year perspective, we're probably gonna get some fat checks from MERS eventually. But right now, we gotta tackle the problem in front of us, which is we don't have enough assets to balance out the retirees that are currently on our benefits, you know? So that being said, this work will immediately lead to a reduction starting on October 1st, 2026. So for the non-union, we estimate it's a 0.62% reduction. So for every dollar we give an employee, it's that percentage of a reduction that we have to put into MERS. For the sheriff supervisor group, it's gonna be a 28.43. And then for the non-union admin, 7.88. As I go through these, think though in terms that money shouldn't just go right back into supporting an operation or bringing back a service, because you only way you make a headway with an unfunded liability is you keep going after it. I would say from communities I've talked to, once you get above 80%, there's a little more breathing room. We're currently around 61%. So the breathing room for us is a ways off. So as we're not in a position to talk about the 10/1/26 budget, but be keeping in mind, recommendation from administration is not to spend that savings, it's to reinvest it, to continue dropping the personnel expenses in perpetuity. We do need a formal motion to adopt this, and it will go to the full board, and then we can get it to MERS, and they can get us set up for that 10/1 reduction. And the last thing I'd add is everyone who does business with us, whether the Delta contract or if we're able to secure any other contracts, this personnel savings, once they're in the budget, will be a reduction to their service expenses. So Delta has a number of command officers. Those personnel costs from their standpoint, regardless how we reinvest on our side to continue to pay it down, their costs will go down 28% in the pension costs for those members. So we're trying to make it easier to do business with Eaton County in the long run.
All right, so we need a motion to forward this on to the full board. In support, any questions or comments? This is one of these things that when we talk to people in the public about what are the costs of Eaton County doing business, this is one of those things that we can't change. But yet we have to fund it, so. Thank you for your report. Any other comments? Yes, Commissioner Wright.
So, Ben, don't we have to have our pension funded at 65% or above to not have a plan? And this is our plan because we're at 61%, you're saying?
No, it's at 60% that we're required. We have to be
okay, so
funded.
we're
So this is
1%?
not a plan for us to present to the state. This is
Oh, okay.
your plan as a Board of
This is
Commissioners to address it, correct?
Okay, good. I'm glad we're working towards keeping away from having to deal with the state.
Then I'd just like to add too, one of the things that I started recommending and the board that had changed had agreed to was to make sure that we were paying in to the fund more. So we were not taking reductions that we could take. There was a gap that we could do that was like a phase-in plan. So one of the things that we said was, we're not going to take the credit for that phase-in because we just keep getting more and more behind. The other thing that we did, we have the thankful ability to bring back retirees now where they don't have to end their pension. So a previous retiree can come back that has a lot of experience that goes through December 31st of 2027. We hope that that's extended. But what that does, the employee doesn't pay into the pension and the county's not required to pay into the pension. So what we have done is to ensure that we stay, we have that position still there. If it's vacant by that retiree at some point, we're still behind because that position has to be funded. As Ben said, they really want that up front. So we have made sure that we're still making that payment. We budget for that retiree even though it's not required of MERS. And then the other thing that we have done with the board's approval, our recommendation, was to utilize the funds that are budgeted even if a position's vacant. Whereas before, we were receiving savings, and that was what you rolled over year after year. So we're utilizing that to actually pay in the additional to the fund. And Melissa and I go through and analyze that. There are some grants that we're not allowed to do that with. That savings has to roll over. But we go through and do that with health insurance, retirees' health insurance, and the retirement fund, so that we're staying on task. And so I appreciate the board for going with that direction, whereas in the past, it wasn't something that was done.
How many people do we have on staff, and when you mentioned the healthcare, are going to be eligible for retiree healthcare? Do you have a rough idea?
The remaining people right now are 40. Yeah, 44 people, and they keep dropping off. We'll have some additional people that are retiring this year that will drop off.
Okay. Thank you.
And then the one thing I didn't add, this projection doesn't take account into market activity. So we went from 62 to 61 and a little below 61 because there was a bad stock market year in 2019. And the way it's set up is those assets are smoothed over a period of time. So rather than taking a massive loss in the year of it, they smooth it over like a 5-year period. But what that means is one bad year kind of brings you down over a period of time. So all I can say, though, is whether or not the board made the prudent decision to actively attack the unfunded liability, you would have been impacted by a market swing anyway. So if there is like a drop in the stock market, say in the next, I don't want to say it, but if that were to happen, just know it will throw the projections off, but you will be in a better position than had you done nothing and then still been subject to the whims of the market. So, but I would say MERS does a fairly good job of trying to, have a balance between like stable assets and things that have a high rate of return and managing that loss. I wish I could get those kind of returns in my own portfolio, but at the same time, we're talking magnitudes of degrees far bigger than like a basic household. But I'm trying to use those as examples because sometimes pensions can seem big and confusing, and really at the end of the day, it's just you gotta planfully move forward to deal with it, and that's what we're trying to do.
All right. Any other questions or comments? All right, we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? All right. Item number D.
All right, so this is an annual snapshot. A benefit that we make available to all of our employees is Encompass. So this is an extra benefit. Essentially what it is, it's like counseling services and support services for employees. Even folks that don't have our health insurance qualify for it. One of the paramount things they offer is up to 5 free counseling sessions, and I believe it's on a per issue basis, right? So, but employees can call. Most of I think their phone staff are counselors. So if you need immediate assistance in real time, you don't have to wait to get an appointment and wait 3 weeks. You can talk through it with somebody on the phone. They also have a lot of resources online to help, like going through divorce, moving, loss of a loved one. So it's kind of an encompassing service, hence the name, right? And so we provide this to our employees just as an extra benefit to help them manage the difficulties in life that as an employer we often can't help them with, but we want them to be successful through whatever they're going through. It's up for renewal There's a usage report in front of you. As you go through, you can see it. And this just kind of breaks it down in an aggregate. So employees know, we don't know who calls or anything like that. They just tell us generally if it was stress-related, if it was work-related, et cetera, so that you can kind of see how the usage is going through. So the renewal this year is $7.30 per user. Our population went down because of the budget reductions, so the total number covered under the policy will go down to 327. And then they have the additional rate hours available. So in review of this, we're recommend continuing our renewal with Encompass and
I just want to mention one other thing. A couple or maybe a few years ago, Chief Judge Cunningham had come to us to ask if we could use that service for jurors. So jurors have the ability to utilize the service as well. Just, it's a good program that the Chief Judge had come up with.
And the prior year was $7.16, so it's a pretty reasonable change.
Make a motion that we accept the ZAP contract.
Moved and supported. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion is carried. And item E.
All right, last item for me. So this is a agreement that was forwarded for your consideration from Public Safety. Delta Township had made an investment in an alert system improvement that they identified that they thought fit their community's needs. It was structured differently than the current alert system that is available through 911 and Central Dispatch. So we've been trying to reconcile that difference since this went through. They've already made the procurement, and so in some ways, we're really trying to make it work because they can't go back, nor do they want to because, again, they're trying to pick something unique for their size population and the needs of their community. So we have been working on developing an intergovernmental local agreement. This one will be structured a little differently. It's in the packet as a draft. I just spoke with Manager Brian Reed this morning, and we're going to we'll just bring it back in December. We're not going to ask any action on it today because they still need to get staff feedback to us. We just got some finalized quotes that we need to put in to build out an Appendix A. But the most part of it is it's going to be made up of a bulk of agreed cost sharing in year one because we're going to have to do some tech improvements to have a screen available just for this alert system over in dispatch. And maybe some spatial needs, like if we need additional desk space for the extra monitor, training for staff and tech services, and in central dispatch. And then we would propose like a flat rate for the admin fee, like a minimum threshold, but a lower than 15% since all the rest of the cost is going to be 100% covered by Delta. And there's some integration expenses too. So it's the big summary of it. I can answer any questions, but we will bring this back with agreement that is agreeable for both parties so that we can move it to the full board next month.
And this was addressed by Director Flynn at Public Safety.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
It was.
So, do you have anything to add? No? Okay. All right, thank you.
I guess the only thing I would add is in the future, because we don't have capacity to have a different alert system for everyone. Kelly's going to work on developing a process where a community could go through, what's the term of the committee?
So we have 3 subcommittees. We have fire and EMS, and then law enforcement, and then we have a central dispatch subcommittee. So fire EMS is obviously fire EMS, law enforcement, and then it is a combination of law enforcement and fire and EMS personnel in the subcommittee or the central dispatch committee meeting. I did have a fire and EMS meeting last night, and I did touch base that I would be working on a policy. The biggest thing is technology services also has to put time and energy into this whenever new technology comes to 911 or any of the agencies we serve buy new things. So we really need to take that in consideration. And the biggest thing is like this alerting system is a lot of work. We don't want another agency to come in and choose a completely different alerting system. And now we have multiple alerting system equipment in our facility, and we're managing all that. So we're working towards kind of streamlining that. So the committees will kind of pick one product that they want, and if that's the fire alerting system they want, then that's what they'll all move forward with. So obviously, this was already chosen. We had a discussion last night, made everyone aware, and what the future looks like if you want to add new technology that integrates with our systems, so.
And the benefit to a community going through that procedure, if it's adopted countywide, then it's a central dispatch 911 implementation, which means millage funds can be used, and it relieves the burden on a community to try to finance this stuff on their own. But it'd be a countywide implementation, which is what we've had and what we would like to continue to retain, just because I think we had the discussion with the record policy too, but it's like our dispatchers aren't, AAA. There's limitations on how many demands you can put on your current staff footprint before you have to start reinventing your operation. And we try to limit that so that there's efficiencies, accuracy, and people don't have two different procedures and maybe screw them up in a moment because they're trying to navigate an emergency situation really quickly. So the streamlining is not just for those pieces, it's also for accuracy of the work they perform, so.
Commissioner Barber.
Yes, didn't we pass a policy said 15% admin fee?
Correct.
Okay, so I expect that you're gonna come back with some other policy. If we're looking at this and you're saying, well, the workload and stuff like that, then I'd expect another policy that outlines X amount of participation, we're gonna charge this. Because we had the fire come in here, right? We charged them an admin fee. And we've said at this board and the other boards, everybody gets 15%. And then you just said, we're not gonna charge them 15%.
Let me clarify.
It goes against the policy.
Let me clarify. That policy allows by a 2/3 majority to override it. For the fire committee, for that training facility, we only did 3%. This one proposes a 10% admin fee. This will require an override because it's less than 15. What I meant by that was if it's a year where there's no expenditure, at a minimum, we're going to get $2,500 to cover the staff expenses on a recurring basis.
Yeah.
But I hear you, and yeah.
The reason why is we gotta be careful with language, right? If we say 15% and then we pass a policy for 15% and then we don't charge 15%, I would expect Delta to become knocking on our door. You know what I'm saying? So we have to be careful about what we're saying and how we execute this. So.
I appreciate that.
Okay, any other questions? Commissioner Barber. Commissioner Wright.
Okay, so I don't know who wants to answer it, Ben or Kelly, but I'm not real sure. It doesn't have anything to do with us and Delta getting alerts. It just has for the fire departments to communicate.
So what this would look like is that we take a 911 call, like a fire or EMS call that's in Delta's area. And as soon as we finish that call, so sometimes we have to do EMD, which is called emergency medical dispatch, to prioritize and so we finish the call, and this would, an automated system, page their fire station and give them information about that call. So right now, my dispatchers tone the station and say, they key up the mic and say what kind of call it is and the basics that they need for dispatch. This would be an automated system.
Thank you. 'Cause at this time I didn't want public safety, sorry.
It's okay.
Any other questions or comments? All right. So what do we need to do here?
Nothing. We'll bring it back next month with finalized figures, and if the appetite is to do an override on that 15%, otherwise we'll go back to the drawing board.
All right. Thank you, Kelly. Anything else, Ben? All right. Moving on, item 11, Finance Director.
Good morning. So before you, you have your health insurance report. This shows actual expenditures and revenues for the fiscal year through the end of the fiscal year 2024-25. This is not final numbers because we have not received our final settlement yet, and we have not done our final reporting for the audit. It does show reporting figures over the same time period, and you can see there's a substantial savings in our prescription costs. Part of that is because of the exclusion of our GLP-1 that has made a big difference, almost $750,000 of savings year over year. Additionally, we've got some savings year over year from our retirees health group. That was due to the implementation of the Medicare Advantage program, and this is true costs or true savings that the county is experiencing year over year. So this has made a big difference in the longevity of our retirees health program as well as our health insurance and the financial stability of both of those programs. Are there any questions on the report?
How long are we on that Medicare Advantage contract that
So the contract is locked in through the end of December of 2026. Yes.
Which is a little bit terrifying, given what we've seen in rate increases throughout the country. So that'll be something that we have to look at and make sure that we have a reserve within the fund to cover that. The other thing I'd like to just mention, when we did our health insurance renewal and we gave a long presentation about that, one of the things that when we got into discussions with Blue Cross and Blue Shield, it was good, and I applaud both Ben and Melissa for the way they handled that. Maybe they were really direct. I want to say the word that Melissa said, but I'm not sure I remember, but it was, yeah.
Highway
It was really, yeah, it was highway robbery. So one of the things that Melissa did is she did an analysis based on those GLP-1 drugs going back and the savings that we would have because they were charging us in our rates for that. So I just wanted to give them credit for the fact that they were able to lower our rates based on that analysis that was done.
Any other questions, comments? All right.
That concludes my reports
Were
today.
either very thorough, very confusing, I'm not sure which.
Bit of both.
All righty. Moving on to item 12, facilities. Good morning, Chad.
Good morning, Commissioners. Chad Powers, Facilities Director for Eaton County. I'll start today. You hear us talk a lot about the capital improvement plan, but I wanted to just give a little background. The capital improvement plan started back in 2023 when shortly after Connie became administrator, she came to facilities and technology services, and we needed to implement a plan. Before that, we had a very rudimentary capital improvement plan that was vague and somehow it sufficed for a while. But if you're looking at other counties, they have an in-depth, detailed capital improvement plan. So that's what we set out to achieve. And that really started the planning process, taking a deep dive into what our infrastructure needs were from both facility standpoint and technology services. So I'll fast forward through now and talk about, we're starting to see the first round of projects being implemented. Back last year in '24, we didn't have funding available to tackle some of these things. So again, they were deferred another year. So with the funding that became available through our bond funds that went out, municipal bonds, we're able to prioritize a list, and now what you're seeing is the implementation of our plan that started over 2 years ago. So with that, the big one that everybody can see, the most visible, is the courthouse concrete replacement. We started that this week and chose to do that because we had a holiday this week, and then with the Friday being closed, it was less of an impact to public and staff, so we chose that. Obviously, you get this time of year, the weather is a little dicey, but we were able to get through it, and by the end of the day today, we'll be complete, and all the entrances will reopen on Monday. We replaced approximately 8,000 square feet of sidewalk and walkway in the front of the courthouse and also at the back. There were 5 bidders that when we bid this job, and they all came in pretty close. The low bidder, interesting story, after I awarded the bid and we were talking about scheduling and so forth, he shared a story with me and asked that I'd share it with you guys. So his name is Matt, and he graduated from drug court in 2020. So he was on his way to prison and was able to successfully complete the alternative drug court. And now he obviously did a 180, turned his life around, and he said he never thought he would be getting a PO from the county who he nearly went to prison, was sentenced to prison. So great story. And he actually asked me to share that. And I spoke briefly yesterday with Judge Cunningham, and she said, yeah, he's a perfect example of why we have that. So I just wanted to share that with you guys. I thought it was a pretty good story.
Thank you.
And then also the biggest impact for this project, obviously the main entrance and the disruption to the public flow. And I'm sure some of you today, had to be rerouted, and I saw Ben out there kind of directing traffic. But the most impact being, the public and the courthouse security team. So we had to move them down to the alternate entrance. And they were, very supportive and helpful. They're the ones that had to deal with it day to day, and then also our employees at the back entrance, and it's went very well this week. So huge shout out to all of our employees and then the courthouse security team. The next project coming up that you heard me report on last month is the fire alarm upgrades at the jail. That'll be starting here before the end of the month. Not as high profile or noticeable. It's kind of behind the scenes stuff, but obviously extremely important that we tackle that one too. Then yesterday we met our courthouse security committee. That's more of a court thing. It's a requirement that we meet quarterly and discuss some of the improvements that can be made from a facility standpoint. And we met yesterday for that and discussed, additional duress buttons for offices and how to manage some of the more challenging people that come into the courthouse and to make sure everybody's safe. And we're looking at camera options. That's more Eric's ballpark, but just an update that we did meet and discuss some things there. And then finally, last month, Chairman, you asked for some updates on analytics from the charging stations, the electric vehicle charging. And I'm going to invite Nathan up. He's the subject matter expert, and he will have plenty of information for you. So that concludes my report. If anybody has any questions, I'm glad to answer them.
Well, we might want you back because we're going to talk about lease updates, but.
Oh, okay. I'm not going anywhere.
All right, so I put together some numbers for everybody. So just so everyone's clear, we have 4 chargers out front, 4 chargers out back that were included as part of the infrastructure energy upgrade. So year to date, we've had 406 total charge sessions. And what this essentially means, someone shows up, plugs in their car, we deliver them power of some kind of a value. Depends how long they're there. We have had approximately 2,000 hours of charging this year that we've been charging vehicles. The connected duration is around 88 straight days of cars that have been plugged in here getting power. We provided about 8,800 kilowatt hours. So we've saved approximately 645 gallons of fuel, and we've saved approximately 160 trees. One other part is we've had 107 unique drivers. So 107 different people. So if you see the same vehicle every day, that's just one, which that's a lot larger number than I would have expected, since we're not exactly a popular destination for EV drivers, I thought. So then from a month-to-month standpoint, I just pulled the month of October. We had 42 charge sessions. Our energy usage, which this classifies as usage, which that means delivered as well, is up 28%. So we kind of see this, it looks like every fall, people want to charge their vehicles a little more as the temps go down. Yeah. Important part here, revenue. So for the month of October, we successfully had $6.52 of revenue. So after 5:30, we do charge for electricity. That's when it does cost the county to deliver the services. So it's 30 cents a kilowatt hour to plug your vehicle in. The vehicles that I've noticed that are here charging after hours and that are paying are typically very small vehicles that have a very, very small battery. No one seems to want to bring a Cybertruck here overnight. It's just not the right kind of a charger for that kind of scenario. But it certainly is available, and it would work perfect if somebody did want to do that. Do you guys have any specific questions related to the chargers at all?
I don't see any. So just to be clear, though, the county does not own any electric vehicles, correct?
No.
Okay, so these are all people in the area stopping by to do business at the courthouse.
Yeah.
And these are not rapid chargers, the supercharger, I think I've heard them.
No, so there's 3 levels of charging. Level 1 is just a normal 110 outlet. Level 2 is typically like a 220 welder, refrigerator, dryer kind of a deal, and that's what we have. We have the lower end of a level 2, and level 3 is what is considered a DC fast charger or a supercharger in the Tesla world. So our chargers are around 6 to 7 kilowatt, and I believe a Tesla charger is going to be 250, and a charger that would charge like a GM truck, for instance, would be 350. So we're the slowest of the faster ones, if that makes sense.
And these chargers are primarily powered by our solar array, is that correct?
Yeah, so they're technically plugged into the grid that the solar array is fulfilling energy to. You wouldn't want to tie them directly into the solar part of it, because you'd have to have some kind of a mechanism to switch them from our own solar power to line power at 5:30. So it kind of equals itself out.
Okay. So it's not a windfall, but at least we're breaking even.
Yeah, we're certainly not losing money on the actual charging, but I don't think that these chargers were purchased necessarily for a huge revenue.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Nathan. I appreciate it.
Any other questions?
Nathan, on this?
But Nathan, the reason, sorry, Brian.
Let's, go ahead.
The reason that we do it for free during the day is because we don't have any storage capacity on our complex, right? For our own electricity that we're making from the solar panels. Is that
Right.
correct?
Yeah,
So we just are saying, come on over and use it to
Yeah, we would
our
get
residents.
we would get a credit one way or another, whether we use it or it goes, we essentially sell the power to the health department or somebody else. We're gonna get value for all the power we create, absolutely.
Okay.
Whether it goes into a vehicle or, home or whatever else, we do absolutely capture every kilowatt, every watt we can.
Okay, thank you.
It's kind of a really complex, nerdy system we've discovered, but it's pretty cool how it works.
Thank you, Nathan. I appreciate it. Chad would come back up.
Yeah,
Yeah, before we move on to the leases, I wanted to touch on what Chad had brought up, and you can come up, Chad, if you want, make you stand there. One of the things, the capital improvement plan, that's something the county should have had years ago. It's something that, and I can speak to both Claudine and I had approached previous administration about doing an actual capital improvement plan. It's an actual requirement that you have it. You should be vetting and doing things every year and have a 5 or 6 year plan, and it rolls over every year, so you'll be looking at that again. It was something that was never wanted to be addressed previously, and the board had never requested that, had never been updated on that. There are certain things that, you know, your administrator, you should expect. So that's one of the things that when we switched over administration, and not to fault anything, but those were the commitments that I made to the board when I took this position, that we would start looking at those things that we need to do so that you can make informed decisions. You shouldn't rely on me to tell you what it's going to be, and then we get to a certain point and we find out that we're not there. That's how we got into budgetary issues. But on the capital improvement plan, the one thing, and we talked about this multiple times over the last 3 years when we were going through the budget process and the financial stability work group, and there's only one individual left still, and he's not here, is Chairman Mott, that was in that group. And we had a lot of heated discussions related to capital improvement. Both Chad and Eric from technology sat in on those, and it was a lot of discussion on, we don't need to do that, we shouldn't do that. And Chairman Mott was very insistent, so I'll give him a lot of credit on that and taking that information to the board. But what we found when we took over, and we started talking solar, because they talked about the charging panels, which was part of that whole project. And remember, part of our energy efficiency plan that we did was to have a guaranteed savings with the company that was used, which is Johnson Controls. Part of that was to have your capital improvement plan. So what's on the screen right now before you, that's essentially only carried out for 5 years, what our old capital improvement plan, we called it a public improvement plan, looked like. Within that, when Johnson Controls, and that was former controller, met with Johnson Controls, and I think we've talked about how we would not have made the same recommendation. Again, sins of the past, it is what it is. Same thing with MERS and updates that were done years ago, right? You have to live with that when it happens. To get that guaranteed savings, had we had the capital improvement plan that you've approved now, we would have had to, they would have had to been on the hook for that guaranteed savings, saying that we didn't replace a chiller, or we wouldn't have had to replace those. That's part of it. So if they said it was $145,000, I believe, that was the only thing, and it was a 1-year purchase that was included on that plan. So all they had to manage in that guaranteed savings was $150,000. If we looked at that savings, and I don't have it in front of me now, we would have been looking at $500,000 to $1 million. So when we went to the table, we should have had that information, and we didn't. So you have that now to make informed decisions into the future. And that was an awful lot of work that Director Daly did and his team, and Chad and his team have done, and then my team have done, to get that plan together and to make sure that we're actually funding things that we should. And I will note, your responsibility as a board, and if you read what Board of Commissioners does, is to maintain your properties. Specifically mentions the jail, and it mentions your properties. So what have we not done here? We've maintained the jail because you have inspections. I think the sheriff would probably argue that there are certain things that we could do more of, and we'll work toward that. That's in our plan. But we were not doing sidewalks. Those, we had a commissioner, Vol, severely injured.
We had 2 commissioners and 1
Oh, it was
public.
one member of the public that recently, which is a county liability and a shame for a member of the public or anyone to be injured on a county property, right? Bricks, you'll see, if you walk outside, you'll see, bricks falling. They're starting to, there's a term for it. I don't know any of that stuff.
Tuck pointing.
Thank you.
The mortar starts to fail. And
Yeah, and we have those things throughout the building. We were penalized severely for replacing carpet during the last budget year when we were having to make cuts. Well, one, that was in our plan that we had, the old plan. We had already purchased the carpet, so not putting it in didn't make sense, right? And then the other thing is that carpet truly was a health issue. When they pulled that carpet up, it just like disintegrated. It was terrible. But those are the things that you should be expecting to see. You should be questioning why something isn't right. The court, I will say, specifically, is going to question, just like Eric spoke about earlier today, their technology, their facilities that they have to use for court and for staffing. Those are things that will come up into the future, especially as the state is addressing trial court funding. So all of these things we had to use in analyzing trial court funding requests that we've received from the state. So we had to use our capital improvement plan to let them know the things that were on the horizon. The court had to give an assessment, and I gave an assessment of what our facilities were like. Were they poor? And it was specific. And those are the things that we were able to use that plan for. So I just want to say that you're all doing a great job by having that plan and moving forward to make your decisions. Oh, did I touch on everything? I know I went on. Thanks.
All righty. Next item, Chad.
So the next item is our lease agreements, and I reported last month that we were negotiating with the state of Michigan as well as for the DHHS property building that we own and lease to them, and then also the federal government with the USDA space that they lease in the 551 building. So obviously the federal one has been kind of slow moving, but I believe we're real close to an agreement with the state. And if you wanted to weigh in on that, I think we're real close. And it was a significant amount that we found that it was way below market value, and we were able to negotiate it to be more beneficial to the county, so.
Chad, you're not doing yourself or me credit. That lease it was interesting when we met with the state. They're like, yeah, we've never seen a lease like this before, because it was a 10-year with 2 optional 5-year renewals with no rate changes over the 20-year period. So that lease sat at $7.13 per square foot for 20 years. So I don't know who sat in a room and thought that was a good idea, but never again. So we got, Chad did an assessment of what he thought commercial real estate in the area was. We sat in a room with them, and our last best final was $17.85 a square foot, which makes allowance for admin revenue as well as staff revenue. And that's about a 60% increase from where we were. So they did respond back and said they accepted it, but they said $17.58. So I have to clarify that they meant $17.85 because that was our last best and final. So we're real close, but I think that's a lease that we can sign and feel comfortable with. Couple caveats we included in there was we let them know we may need the space. So we're not looking for a long-term, other than we asked that they do a space study so they can determine how much of the building they actually use. And if so, then we might do a cost sharing where we actually minimize the amount of square footage they use so we can give office space back to county services. Because you have all sorts of divisions all over the place that they don't know where to put staff. They don't have it. So even if we can get the staff, it's difficult to put people on top and on top of each other. So anyway, I think this was a good exercise and good use of time, and thank you for Controller Sobey for supporting us in this venture. And hopefully that agreement doesn't expire till like end of next year, so we really won't take action on it until probably February or March, but that's the update for where we're at.
And one other thing, with the federal government shutdown, the USDA offices were closed, and the Eaton Conservation District shares space with that office, so they were essentially locked out. They couldn't utilize their office space, and we were able through Claudine Williams and Bill at the MSU Extension, we were able to find some space in that office, and it may turn out to be their permanent space. They've got some unused office space in there, and we came together and met here a few weeks ago, and that sounds like it's gonna be a good solution for Conservation District, so that piece came out of this as well.
I would note too, it's really interesting when we start doing this, and people didn't know that we were getting into it, other than we did talk about it at committee a while back, but we've had inquiries, the one with the Conservation District about space. We had inquiries about space within our basement and expanding for our circuit court probation. That's a state-run office, but we provide space. We have a lot of space issues, obviously, within the county, and that we would look at changing things up, right? So when we started talking about these lease agreements, we had talked about the fact that, you know, the court is kind of, you know, creeping out at the seams, right? They're busting out, as well as the prosecuting attorney's office. And having this be an actual courthouse would be advantageous for that. And then we talked about the possibility, these are the things that we've been throwing around and talked about, having the MDHHS space for county offices. So, you know, there's a balance and weighing of that. When they asked us to do a 20-year lease renewal, it was a 10-year with another 10-year option. You know, we've got to look at, again, our capital improvement plan and what our needs are and expansion. And the court, like I mentioned, has trial court funding, and that will be some of the things that they'll be able to look at, and you better bet that all courts are going to look at it if the state's funding a portion of it, whereas right now we are. They're going to look at needing expansion, and you do have to meet the needs of your offices, especially when you're talking about the court. So, but it's been interesting. I had an inquiry, and I won't say where it's from yet, but about possible space in the DHHS building that would benefit some processes that we have within the county. So you bring some agencies all together that do county work, and they're looking for space. And one of the offices we used to have within the county. So this all comes up right now, so doing a short-term lease allows us to look at something into the future for any agency that may want to lease it. And if MDHHS is not using that space to, you know, if they're not in there, they're working remote, whatever it is that they're doing, and they don't need that space, and we do, then we shouldn't be running out space that we need. So just wanted to mention that. It is interesting how we had all these requests of people who wanted to now rent space from us. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, comments on, oh, Commissioner Christensen?
Oh, that's not a hand.
Oh. All right, Ben seeing things. So what do we need to do on this item then?
No action, just an update.
Okay. All right, anything else, Chad?
Concludes my report.
All right, thank you, sir. At this time, I think we'll take a 10-minute recess and before we get into our next discussion. If everyone will take their seats, we will come back to order. And we will move on to item number 13, 2025-26 budget amendments.
Well, we do not have any budget amendments in the packet, but we're talking about planning and zoning under this because there was a discussion about a budget amendment. So let me first start with what we did during the budget process. During the budget process, the intent and the work that was done was to have a contract with the local units. It was budgeted that we would bring in revenue of $186,000 from the local units, $185,000 from the local units, and then that we would bring in revenue from our permits, applications to get the permits. And so the budget then supported the personnel, the staff of 50% of 2 staff members. At one point, it was going to be 0.25 of another staff, and then that ended up being backed out when the budget and everything started to fall. So what we're looking at right now, where we had townships say that they didn't want to be part of the contract and going through that process, now what we've come to is having a way to assist the townships that really wanted to contract with us, and now we're at that point that we can't because, again, and I know this is confusing, we have a countywide ordinance. And when we talked to legal counsel, we were not able to say this community, because they're not paying us a contractual fee, we're not going to serve them. Now, could you potentially do that? Yeah, but then you're not following your ordinance as a board, right? So you're gonna get, you know, there's gonna be a problem because we're not serving a community. So the communities that then were able to come back and do their own at that time, now they have their own master plan and they have their own ordinance within their community. That's like Hamlin Township. They went on their own, so they don't follow our ordinance. That's what we were looking for. So part of the issue that we have now for the townships would be how can we extend them out to a point that they will have their master plan and an ordinance of their own and assist, you know, in some manner. So one of the things that they've talked about, and it's Walton Township and Chester Township, so Doug Thering and Justin Vetter have worked with the other communities to see about forming a township, or it would be a joint planning act that they would fall under. So they could join together and do work and create their own master plan. So they all have to work and agree together. They have their own planning and zoning committee, right? So they're on their own. The other communities that are opting out would do their own and would be separate. Now, maybe they would find, you know, that when this gets started, maybe they would find they wanted to join in. So our goal right now would be to extend it out. Now, whether we extend it to December or we extend it to, you know, the end of June or to the end of the fiscal year, that's where the budget comes in. So a couple of complex items here. Some people have said that the revenue that we earned last year would be something that we could use for this year. But the budget, when I run a report, shows that the county spent $100,000 of its general fund, because that's what it was, a general fund department. Construction code, planning and zoning had increased the fees, so they brought in more revenue than what they had anticipated, but it wasn't revenue to cover the whole department. So it's not like there's a savings in the general fund from that department, that general fund department. So what we did in the budget, like I said, was to create the township contributions, local unit contributions, and the expenditures in Fund 216. So anyone can go look, and we discussed this during the whole budget process, that was the intent of what we were doing. That was what this board approved at the time, that Fund 216 will show you what the expenses are and the revenues. Now, what we've done, and Ben did some work just this week actually, was to look at the projections with the increase in the fees, the revenue that were done, and how we could extend it out. So for this year, we've brought in $24,750 in revenue right now. So that gets your permits, and Claudine can explain it better. I think you'll correct me if I'm wrong. But that gets us through December and the work that will be done at the December Planning Commission, right? So the revenue came in October and November for the people paying their application fees. So we already have that revenue. Anything that occurs past today is additional revenue that would go into, say, January or February, and that's what we tried to project. So in looking at that and the numbers that Ben had, if we used last year's permits, number of permits, we would bring in between $3,000 and to a max, I think, of $4,000. But again, that's only using what occurred last year. So the difference and why you see 24,000 that came in with all of these permits, you may think, oh, this is great. You increase the revenues and the fees, and now all this money's coming in. But what happened is communities knowing that this was going to happen, and people who had been talking to Brandy and Chris about things that they wanted to do, then stepped up and they want to get this done before a community takes over doing something that is now maybe more restrictive than what the county ordinance is. Because that's what you have. You can have more restrictive or you can have less than what we have right now, which is the concern that we all have about the county as a whole, right? So that's where we're at today. We definitely would have the funds to carry us through December of this year. We can work on our projections and the reduction of staff time. So reduce it to half time of one individual working instead of half time for two individuals, and extend that out longer. That will be a discussion that we're going to have not at this meeting, not at next week's board meeting, but at next month, because the townships are having a meeting on November 24th. We received an email from Walton Township, Doug Thering, that they have met. They're all going to come together and try to see what they can do with the Joint Planning Act. Now to address the other part of the county's involvement in the master plan and the development and the requirement that since we have an ordinance and a planning commission, we have to have a master plan, and every year the county has set aside $6,000, and we've done this for years, to set it aside in a separate fund to pay for the master plan. So you don't then just get an influx and say, we've got to pay $75,000 for a master plan. You are planning for that expense in a separate fund because you're required to do it. So that money, what?
Every 5 years, you have to update the master plan.
Yes, yes. So we are at that point where it's time to do our master plan. So one of the things that Construction Code Planning and Zoning did, and Brandy did a lot of work on it, is she applied for a grant, received $50,000 to update the master plan. So here's where we're at with that. We have spent now $20,000, just over $20,000 that's been paid to that vendor. And to work on the master plan. Now, we don't know, we can't speak to where he is in that, but we are meeting with him this afternoon to get that information on where he is with that plan. Discussion about whether or not we move forward with that plan. If we end it right now, the risk there would be that we would lose that grant funding potentially, because they would say you didn't use it for the master plan. So now we have to pay that money back, and that's a general fund expenditure, or out of that fund, that planning or the comprehensive plan, master plan fund that we have. So a lot of things that are in play right now. But what our vision would be, like we said, let's try to extend out where we can for the community so that they can still fall under our ordinance until they're prepared to do whatever they do. And then to also put a dollar amount that the county could commit out of that master plan fund that could be used toward those communities doing this joint planning act. If they didn't want to use our ordinance, which they could, or use our ordinance and master plan, they could adopt the master plan that we're working on right now. So that's not a act of futility, using that vendor, plus it's grant funded. That would be something that they could use. So we can have that discussion. We'll have the discussion with the contractor today, and then discuss what that contractor would do if they didn't want to use our plan and they wanted to go on their own. And then the board would have to decide how much you want to commit toward that expense. But the goal and administration's recommendation, as we've sat around talking about it, would be to provide those communities with funds to do that as we separate and having the ordinance. So Claudine, go if you want to go
Just one
on.
clarification I would make to that.
Thank you.
The funding that we're looking at to assist the townships would just be for the townships that want to participate in the
Correct.
Joint Municipal Planning Act. So if 5 communities come together and want to participate in this Joint Municipal Planning Act, we would help them by way of possibly paying for a consultant or an attorney to help them get everything set up. It wouldn't be an allocation directly to the townships. It would be to pay for the services that they would need by way of a consultant or an attorney to help set them up.
Correct, thank you. But what it does for us right now, potentially, or for communities, would be if they see this and they all have that meeting on November 24th, that they may decide that this is something that could work overall for planning and zoning in their jurisdictions rather than going out on their own. And then the challenges that you have, they've all accepted the county ordinance, but the challenges that you have would be one community and a joint planning act being totally separate than the direction that another community wants to go. And we know that, obviously. So, but a lot in play, things that we can do to help. But again, I will just note, mandated services were the direction that the board went. So there are services that the county is mandated to do, and I'll note the one that I mentioned earlier, you're mandated to keep up your properties. So that's a mandate, and we hadn't been doing that, right? We had not been sufficiently, in what our opinion in administration, facilities and technology, we hadn't been doing that. You're mandated to have a jail. So you're not mandated to have planning and zoning. So the question by the board and the question during all of our proposals, the 2 proposals that we have, to note, go back to Ben, it did not pass. So that was to, if we had to, we would give up those mandated services as the savings to be able to do what you are mandated to do. So you're mandated to have the court, you're mandated to have the treasurer's office, you're mandated to provide a serviceable level to departments. That's how all of this went. That's discussions that we had prior to, and when we were out talking to communities and in the newspaper and wherever we went, we were talking about mandated versus non-mandated services. So animal control is a non-mandated service. It's under an ordinance. So your option is to repeal that ordinance. You know we're going to be looking at that. We are, because we're kind of in limbo right now with just having one individual there. Planning and zoning was the other, and road patrol. So we're solving road patrol with contracts, and we're trying to work with communities that want to do contracts and maybe bring on other communities that could share resources that still meet the contract that we have with Delta Township to not, to not end up, when we're back to the table where Delta Township says, they're getting a better deal than what we are. And that comes into what we call Command Central over here, right? Because we don't have a county road patrol, but we have command staff that are still here, as we're required to have to perform other functions, example, court security that we have to have. So anyway, this is where we're at. I will say none of us like it. None of us wanted to get to this point, but again, it's a mandated versus non-mandated service, and here's where we are. So we're not ready to have you make a budget amendment. There is a budget already in Fund 216. I can tell you that that will get us through December 31st. So next month, we can have that discussion, and I know to just end it December 31st at your December meeting would not be prudent. It's not a good way for us to do business. But I think staff-wise and cutting the personnel expenses going into it, which means service may slow down a bit, we can manage to extend that out. But you, as a board, have to make that decision. So I talked way too long, so sorry.
Commissioner Wright.
Okay, so the first thing is, Claudine, when you talk about the 50,000, and then you also then talked about if this group of townships get together, maybe 5, we would be able to help them with attorneys and master planning. Would that come out of the master plan grant? The way
So
it's
the
written?
master plan grant is the 50,000. That's the money we already have that we've spent half of. If there are enough communities that want to participate in the Joint Municipal Planning Act, then we potentially could have Mr. Ball, that's the consultant, finish up that master plan. And then they could use that master plan moving forward. That's one of the things we're going to talk to Mr. Ball about this afternoon. If the master plan fund that Connie talked about that we set aside money for every year, that's the fund we potentially could use to help them pay for a consulting and an attorney to help them set up the rest of it. Because there's a lot to setting it up. You have to have an agreement and a fund set up somewhere. You have to have one of the townships agree to be a fiduciary, things like that. So that would be hiring professionals to help them set up the structure so that they can move forward.
Okay. So we wouldn't have to return the grant. That, I was just wondering, I used to write grants, so I am very cautious of getting outside of the lines and having to ever return.
Yep, that's one of the
anything
things we're gonna talk about today, is whether or not that's allowable per the grant.
Okay, that's why. Okay.
Yep.
Commissioner Shaver.
Yeah, thank you for the information. I'm not sure who to address the question to, but can you let us know the balance? I have an understanding of the grant and how that functions, but can you let us know the balance that is left in the 6,000 that's been set aside reoccurring for the last, do you know
Yes.
how much is in that fund?
$73,000.
73,000,
Yep.
okay.
Any other questions? Commissioner Barber.
Yeah, so I really more statements than questions. So your proposal is to fund the department plus give those townships money so they could do their own, right? And then you said that you wanted to give money to the ones who did the joint.
I don't think the recommendation was to give townships money to do their own. The only recommendation was to help
Fund.
townships that wanted to participate in the Joint Municipal Planning
Okay,
Act.
not give the
And we
township
wouldn't be
money,
giving the
but-
money to the townships. It would be paying vendors to help assist them.
Yeah, if the township chose to join the joint. So what you're saying is like, hey, if you join this club, it's more beneficial for you, and if you don't, then technically you'll be penalized.
I wouldn't say penalized. I would say county zoning right now is regional planning, right? You have several communities that are all on board for one. That really is the best way to plan. That really is what makes a community cohesive and makes it a fair, level playing ground.
I'm not
for
disagreeing
everybody.
with you.
If all 16 townships in Eaton County had their own, that's really not advantageous to anybody.
I'm just,
So
I'm
it
just
would be an
letting you
incentive.
know, not to cut you off, Claudine.
Go ahead.
But just to let you know, if I am X township and I choose not to join, they see it as being punished because I know, but you're not going to pay for their consultants. Is that
It
yes,
wouldn't
you
be
are?
my
or no?
recommendation to do that, but the board has the final decision. The board can decide to spend that money however they want.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, that is the, that's. and-
From this conversation, though, I took it as, is if I'm Y Township and I choose not to join the joint, that I wasn't gonna get any funding. Now, I'm just telling you, that's what I heard, right? And if I heard it, I guarantee you a township heard that exact same thing.
Well, some of them have already, and I said this later, but some of them have already said that they're going off on their own. They're going to do their own. And so they may decide that, you know, after they go to that meeting on November 24th, that they no longer want to do that and they could, you know, fall under that Joint Planning Act, which, you know, whether they want to do it or not, again, I think it's identity of a community and what they want to do. And I think some of this has come up in the past. That's one of the reasons that Hamlin Township is no longer in our planning and zoning. That's one of the reasons that Benton Township became a charter township, was due to the whole solar item. So, I mean, that's what you're looking at. Communities may not want to be under, you know, what we had as an ordinance and what a joint planning act would create in an ordinance. So the goal was to implement something that was through a contract, was our initial want, to do a contract for the entire county to maintain the county ordinance as it was, right? But under a contract. That part is not there anymore. We're not at that point. So how can we change it? So it's no longer under the county as a non-mandated function. How can we change that? And the Joint Planning Act is a way that communities can come together and do that. So yeah, it would be great if they, you know, decided to join on, but
I totally agree with you. However, though, I know it doesn't in this board meeting, but that ordinance has got to have a sunset. And I'm just saying is
definitely,
because you've said we can use some funds and we can use this and we can go a little bit longer, you know, through the end of the year. But if the townships don't hear the funds are done, you know, whatever month, let's say February, right? If they don't hear that, then guess what? In February, they're going to be like, why are you doing this to us? You didn't tell us.
no, I totally agree, and you had that discussion at your committee. So that is something that, as we're talking about this today, if you're ready to make a decision on that, that would be what would go to the Board of Commissioners next week. And we could do that because they did have the public hearing related to the ordinance. So I don't know if you want to talk about that.
I think in answer to Commissioner Barber, where we're at today is the committee last week said they want written confirmation from townships at their December Public Works and Human Services meeting. If you get responses back from enough townships that you think it's feasible to move forward with the Joint Municipal Planning Act, then we can talk further about the budget and if we want to help pay for that or don't want to help pay for that or want to help fund people who aren't participating in that, we can have that conversation then. If we do not get enough written responses back, what you think is enough back to warrant assisting them with the Joint Planning Act, then everybody's just kind of on their own. And you can choose at that point in time in December whether or not you want us to move forward with publishing the repeal of the zoning ordinance or whether you want to wait and do that in another month, whether that be January, February, June. But you still have the power in December per the attorney at last week's meeting. I think it was last week anyway. We've already had the public hearing to repeal the ordinance. So at any point in time, the Board of Commissioners can make that decision on whether or not to move forward, and we just have to follow the publication parameters for that.
No, just add a couple of things too is while the discussion of a full repeal has been recent, we had the discussions about this during the budget process and the months leading up to it, which is why we were talking about the contracting model. So the risk of the loss of these services have been out there for a while, even though it may not have registered at a level to where due diligence was taken to potentially be ready to pick up if we cut funding this month. That's a whole other discussion, but county really has tried our hardest to find a path forward with this with communities. That included meeting multiple town halls with all township representatives that they wanted to send. You know, Jim Mott had mentioned the possibility of June. I can tell you June is more than enough time for people to get their ducks in a row. And honestly, earlier than that, probably, but June would unequivocally be something that you guys could talk about next month. The other piece, and I'm not indifferent to that sentiment of I feel like I'm being penalized, it's a decision to go on your own rather than stick together as a class. The one thing I will say, all of them would benefit by a timeline extension. Because as it sits, if we chose March or June, that would mean they're still covered by the county ordinance for 6 months, and they could take a deliberative process instead of a rushed process. And I think I'd heard a couple communities were thinking of putting in a stopgap temporarily, what's the term?
A referendum,
Putting a referendum for no development.
moratorium, thank you,
A
Ann.
moratorium, right? So the alternative would be if our county ordinance was in effect, they wouldn't have to do moratorium. They could have a smoother transition, and all of them will benefit from that. But I think the administration's point of view is the only reason we're extending it is because there are communities that want to take up the mantle for cohesive planning and zoning across townships. And for that, that's really why we're doing it. It's not to, I don't know, yeah.
There's some different thoughts in District 1 about how they're going to approach this. However, what's going to benefit everybody in District 1 the most is having that end date. And so I understand that there's different ways that could be administrated. Looking at, the funds that are available, I would petition for this committee to refer something on to the greater body this month so that we can get an end date. I'm not advocating for that. I want to be clear. I'm not advocating for that end date to be, just a few days from now. But if we can have a date this spring or early summer where things are done, that's going to benefit every single one of the entities that's dealing with this. I do think that the county, as the county, we should look for ways to help them get through to the other side of this. I don't believe that we've caused the problem, but I believe that there's a knowledge base here that can significantly help these townships, whether they decide to work together in an interlocal agreement or they decide to go it on their own. To Commissioner Barber's point, I agree with them. I don't think that it's our position to necessarily incentivize either one. I agree with the sentiment that communities working together, there's lots of benefits, and I think it benefits the overall county, but that's not our decision anymore, and I don't think we should be trying to influence that. I think we need to give them the information that they need, and the information that these townships need the most today is to know the hard date when they have to have things done by. It's been, within communication, it's been difficult to discern whether that was going to be December 6th, now whether it's going to be December 31st. It's kind of like pin the tail on the donkey. I understand that there's been lots of meetings and lots of information, and all of the information that's been disseminated has been done from a place of goodwill. But we really owe it to them to not wait until next month to give them a date when things are going to be done. We really owe, in due diligence, them a date. And I see that we have the funds that we could do what we would need to do for a certain number of months. But I think it's necessary to decide that at our November 19th meeting.
Commissioner Wright.
When as a board, we don't really get involved in budgeting at the very, very beginning. Is it March? Is it April?
So in March, February, the budgets roll out to the departments, the end of February. In March, the first thing that you see are the personnel costs, because my office does the calculation there.
Okay.
The departments have until later in March to present their budgets. So they get their budgets to our office. We immediately turn around and put their requests directly to the Board of Commissioners, or its Ways and Means, in April, at your April meeting. And then my office will then go through and look at their budgets to see what's reasonable. We look at where our fund balance is, what we think we can afford, what direction the board wants to go with different items that we've learned about throughout the year, right? And then in May, we have a communication with the departments to say, we'll reduce something here, that doesn't seem reasonable, or we don't think that you put in enough in this budget line item, right? So that's the way the process goes.
Okay, So, thank you. That tells me the more the behind the scenes timelines that you're working with. So it first goes out in February, right? And the departments start the wheels grinding. All right, so I would think that if you want a drop dead date, they're done the end of February, because that department is going away. So why even talk about it and put it the end of February? Use whatever type of money that you legally can use, that you're not going to be in trouble, and have some numbers to tell your Joint Township Act, or whatever you're going to call it, how much that you legally could use as a bridge from us to them, okay? And then take a look at whatever that master plan, 78,000 or whatever you have set aside, could be distributed to each township. So if they need if all they're gonna get 6,000 over there in Hamlin, then give it to them. But if you want a drop dead date, in my opinion, February, the end of February, you're done.
Commissioner Barber.
I would just bring to the board that we did the budget process, and we're still not hee-hawing on community and mental health funding. We're not discussing the sheriff's budget. We did the budget process, and this department was not funded, and they're still operating. So that's just my comment, that's all.
They're only funded, though, because the budget was adopted to have those contracts in place with the communities. So going back to the communities and the decisions that they've made to opt out, and timing or not, I understand that frustration. But they were asked if they wanted to participate in a contractual arrangement with the county to continue under the county ordinance. We did not get 100% participation. So the communities that backed out before the other communities came up with this Joint Planning Act. So the work that Doug Thering and Justin Vetter have done. They made the decision on their own. All I'm saying is, and I'm not saying we force it or that we, hold a carrot. I'm just saying that the communities that don't want to go off on their own, that's what we would be looking at. That's it, because they might want to take our master plan. Now, the other communities that are doing their own as well, they could still use our master plan if we complete that. They can use our master plan as well, and they don't have to go out and do it. They just have to adopt it, correct, Claudine? So again, they would have the benefit of the county's master plan to then tweak and do whatever it is they want to do in their community. So we're not trying to penalize them. I do want to be clear. I have no problem if we have money left over in that fund. I'm not an advocate for rolling anything back into the general fund. I think I've made that pretty clear throughout the budget process, that that's how we've gotten into issues, is by not funding technology, which is in a separate fund, not funding the public improvement of our buildings. Because, we're taking that money. We've taken money out of the health insurance fund over the years. I could give you a whole sheet on things that were done that it's nothing that I have ever wanted to see. So the leftover funds after the Joint Planning Act, whatever you decide to allocate to that, if you wanted to distribute it to the communities that are going on their own, that's a board decision. That's not, I'm not going to recommend one way or another with respect to that and how you're managing that fund, because that, again, is mandated, non-mandated service, and those are the funds that you're responsible for. Now, Mr. Chair, if you would like a recommendation from administration on the timeline that we would provide to communities, I would be happy to give the discussion that we have had and give you our timeline.
I would. I'd like to preface that, though, with the fact that until that meeting is held by those by the townships, we don't know what they're thinking about right now. So to give them a date, it's going to depend on what they talk about at their meeting. So we won't know till next Wednesday, at least. No, it'll be after that,
Well,
wouldn't it?
We won't know until we talk to Mr. Ball this afternoon how much longer he thinks he needs to complete the master plan. He's
Right.
update that he's.
We
in
have
the
some
middle of.
variables that we can't address.
Right, but we would have that information today. So we would have that. And back to the townships, their meeting that they're having on the 24th, that really just tells the county about the Joint Planning Act and those that are going to. That was the Commissioner Barber with his committee sent out a letter asking for them to give a notification on what they were looking at doing. So November 21st and for 24th was the date of their meeting. December 1st was the date that they were given to get back with us. So the December was part of the discussion. If you wanted to give the announcement today and not using any general fund dollars, I will tell you what my recommendation is.
All right.
Okay, June 30. So July 1st, we would no longer have planning and zoning. And that would give the communities that have already said they're gonna go on their own the opportunity to start vetting that, do an RFP for who they're going to use, how they're going to do their master plan. It gives them the chance to look at it and say, oh, I don't want to do this. It's going to cost us too much money. Now, we can participate in the Joint Planning Act. But again, a lot of this is just holistically based on the county's master plan and where it's at right now. Timing of it is just how it is. And the fact that we have that grant funding that we're using. And if we don't have to pay that back, that's what we like. That's what we would like. But June, I know for sure that we can cover it by utilizing the fee revenue that we've brought in this year. And if we had to use some of that money that's in that master plan fund, comprehensive plan fund, we could do that. It would not be a lot. And then we would just reduce the staff time. So we would say that this is the staff time that we will allocate. The other piece to the budget, there are things in there that they won't need in that department. So they budgeted for some things that they won't need because they're gonna be going out, in June. So we know that we would just tell them, don't buy that, don't expend that, don't do whatever. And that would allow the June 30 date to work. So that's what staff in discussions that we've had would recommend to the board. And if the board wants to, you could do that this month. And then that's the done piece. Now it's all on the townships. And then the only other decision this board has to do is to actually do the repeal, post it, do all that work, and you make a budget decision, an actual amendment, and that's it, on what you're gonna do with that master plan fund for the communities.
Can I clarify one thing with Claudine? I just want to make sure. Does the repeal have to initiate at Public Works and Human Services and then go to the full board? You could make the budget decision today, but I think Public Works would have to take it up. But if you commit budgetarily to June 30, that's the day.
Correct.
Right.
You've had the public hearing, you have the recommendation from the Planning Commission, then it goes to Public Works and Human Services. They would have to make a recommendation to the board.
So today you're solving the budget portion. The policy portion will have to resolve in December. But you could make the commitment to the date now based on the finances.
And again, if that's the direction you want to go, and that's, Commissioner Barber's the chair of that committee, it's his committee, and he's the one that notified the communities. If the full board makes that budget decision, you've really already said that we're not going to, we're going to end the ordinance on this date. You're effectively doing it, but you don't have to physically get that action done. That could come after the fact. So that's where we would go. But if Commissioner Barber wanted to, he could decide to take that action at his committee in December, as Ben said.
Very clear on that.
Okay, so,
All right, Commissioner
so
Wright.
today we can do the financial part and say June 30. That means we don't even have to discuss it in the early stages of the budget process,
Correct.
correct? It's off our table.
Correct.
It's off our situation.
Yes.
Okay.
Commissioner Holmes. Oh, I thought I saw your hand up. Oh, okay. I can see the silhouette.
The lighting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need spotlights on those guys over there. Okay, so everybody's clear on what we're talking about today. Now, question before we make a decision on that. What if, for whatever reason, our funding doesn't extend into June?
What if
If-
if we don't have the money?
Yes,
I'm telling you right now that we can make that budget work.
okay.
So we would have to have some catastrophic issue come up.
Well,
And
welcome to Eaton County.
the staffing level that's the cost. So we can manage that staff time that is spent to reduce the cost. I already know what that is.
Okay.
We can strike, and Melissa and I worked on that budget amendment, we can strike the other items that are in the budget that made up that $190,000 budget. We'll just take those out. Things like we have to keep our liability and the property insurance and the way that we split that up, the phone costs, so on and so forth. Anything that we have to pay, subscription, anything like that, we have to keep those costs. But Melissa did a really good job this morning of backing that out. We can bring that to you next week for the board meeting so that you actually have it physically in paper. We'll put it in your packet. You'll actually see a budget performance report that looks like this. Get it close to I can't get it to the camera. I know, well, I'm putting it on the screen. You can't see it. But anyway, we can get that to you, and then you're making that final decision for the communities that you serve to let them know what direction you're going. That's staff recommendation. Now Ben wants to talk, always does.
No, I just wanted to say, part of the delay for this month was we did want the townships to have an opportunity to caucus and get back to us. Part of that was trying to respect their freedom to make a choice. So I just want to put that out there, and I totally get the desire to provide that clarity and vision and such. But if the township's desire would be, I don't really care, give us a date, we're going to meet anyway, I think that helps, but just from discussions that have been had, that was the intention with not moving on it this month, was to give the townships the opportunity to respond formally what their intentions were in their community.
Okay. All right, Commissioner Shaver.
I would just, in reference to that, I understand that, but I think that it doesn't matter whether the township decides to go it alone on their own, which is their choice, or enter that interlocal agreement. It's beneficial to both categories to know as soon as possible the date that they have to have everything into place.
Correct,
whatever
and that is what they told us. So yes,
So
all
I
of them need
think
to
the
know.
sooner that the Board of Commissioners can get that official date to people, the better off all of our constituents are.
So if this committee wants to tell us to do that, we definitely will take that to the board. We will have a memo and lay it out so the communities have that. We will have the budget amendment that you have to adopt that'll show that we're getting rid of the local unit contribution and the expenses that we won't be using by cutting staff time. We'll have all of that for you next week, and the communities would know that there's an end.
Yeah, thank you. I guess that's just what I would be asking this committee to take up.
Anyone else? So in summation, moving forward from this moment, what do we need to do?
Given the fact that this is budget, I think that you should move, I shouldn't say should, you may move to the Board of Commissioners to extend planning and zoning in the constraint of the budget that we have right now, that staff will develop the new budget to show the revenues coming in, the reduced expenditures that will take us to June. You're not going to have to discuss utilization of that other funding to go to communities, however you wanted to divide that. So it's really just to operate the department and to give the notice to the communities.
Okay, so we do that as consensus here, or do we need a resolution?
You don't need a resolution, but I think move the budget amendment If you do that, then we're taking that, and that's when we will give the full presentation to the board next week.
Okay, and then personally, when it goes to the general board, I would like to see a timeline written into it so that it's fully understood.
Correct, yes.
Okay,
That'll be
dates.
part of it. So, and that's one of the things that we worked on, showing the revenue and the last time that we would take in a permit or application for a permit. And it would be the last time that the planning and zoning committee would meet, commission would meet, planning commission would meet. So we would have that all timed out. We would show you what that revenue projection looks like. We'll be conservative in that revenue projection, given the fact that we don't want to present to the board that we're going to have more money than we do, to make you think that then we should extend it out to the end of the fiscal year or something like that. So we'll make sure that we have a number that we know is likely to extend out. Okay?
Okay, everybody understands that? Any other comments or questions? So just by voice, are we all in favor of moving this on as stated to the full board? Commissioner Wright?
Yes.
Yes. Mark? Okay, I'm in favor of it. Scott? Oh, okay, that's right. Well, thank you for being here. Great. And Keith? Okay, that's what we'll do then. Thank you.
Motion in a second.
Okay.
Just so that it, because it's a budget amendment,
All right.
it really should come out of,
Okay, so do we
Sorry.
have a motion?
Make a motion.
Okay, moved and supported. We'll work on the language later.
Okay.
we will have that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you very much. What's next here?
Next are policy updates, and I know that Logan wanted to address some of that. I don't know, Ben, if you want to, Ben go first.
Just wanted to give an update. Chair Drosha is on this committee as well as other members. It's not a committee, sorry, it's a work group, but the purchasing work group. So we've had a couple meetings, which have been really productive. The work group identified generally 16 broad categories of topics they wanted to address, and we're going through them. Staff has also been developing a purchasing policy based on using comparable communities and counties so that we could combine that. So our intention would be to bring that draft policy that includes feedback from the work group for consideration next month in December. And then there may be other policy changes that we implement later as the work group continues to work through them. But the purchasing work group has been busy, and we look forward to presenting what we've got together so far.
Just to note, the purchasing is something that we've needed to work on for years because it's outdated in 1997,
98.
98. Oh, that's great. So we've needed to do that. This is, again, the stuff that we're doing in our office now to try to make sure that we're doing the job right, correct, for you to make decisions and have policies that you're then monitoring what departments are doing, and my office, what we're doing. So we have a lot of policies that we need to update, and we have policies that we want to create. Priority one was purchasing. You made a change to the policy so that we could meet some requirements under the audit. We met with our auditors yesterday to have a kickoff meeting with them, and we discussed the policies. We discussed policies that would be in 25-26 audit, so that they're prepared for the fact that they'll have to review additional items. And that meeting went very well yesterday as well. And Logan has additional policy updates.
Yeah, very, very quick. I know I've talked at length about the AI policy, and you're all anxiously waiting to see that. I'm meeting with Director Daly from IT in a week or two from now to realign on some of that after we've gathered some more information and done some more research. But what I plan to bring to this committee next month is actually a privacy policy, hopefully. Potentially need to do a legal review, and the Controller Sobey also needs to review it. But what that is, and if you go to look at many municipality websites, most of them they have this listed. Most websites and corporations do as well. This is a fairly simple policy that would legally shield us from claims arising from use or misuse of the content or technical problems on our site, and that is, again, a lot of what AudioEye is doing, but this solidifies that, clarifies references or links to any external entities that are on the website, that they don't constitute our endorsement or partnership officially, prevents confusion between any casual website communications and formal legal notice, and then also it protects our intellectual property from misuse or unauthorized reproduction, which technically all content is covered on our site, all rights reserved, and Civic Plus also has the same thing in a lot of their modules that we use too. So that is just more of solidifying a lot of that. So you'll see that before the AI policy is really what I'm telling you.
Thank you.
The only other policy I want to mention is vehicles, because we've had a turnover in vehicles, and one of the recommendations that Melissa has made for the last 2 years, and specifically noted it for this year, is that we want to get out of the business of leasing, and they're 5-year leases that we have. So we want to look at getting back into, again, it's part of your capital improvement, your equipment, buying those vehicles, and then having a turnover plan. So that's really what the leasing plan was, is have a turnover plan. But we're finding in the analysis that Melissa had done that it really isn't beneficial, especially in certain areas. And when we get to that point, she'll talk about it. But I've had discussions with one department, and so I'm going to say this publicly, that we don't want to do something with a vehicle that we would have to lease. So there was a vehicle that was in the budget to lease, not to purchase. So we don't want to do anything with that until we have a policy in place. So we're looking to, push that out. Now, if it's a specialized vehicle, not like a truck or a car, then those are budgeted, and parks would be one. They have some vehicles that were part of the parks millage and the whole plan. We would still recommend those, but as far as the vehicles that would be replaced on a lease, we need to look at those differently. And then as another point to that, we unfortunately have a lot of accidents. So patrol vehicles get in a crash, total the vehicle, that vehicle's gone, and we use the lease program to purchase new, to get new. And so we've been working with the chief deputy on that and how they're doing their replacements and want to do their replacements. But that puts a mid-year situation. So a couple of years ago, if you might remember, we had an incident in Charlotte that we had 6 cars respond, and we had 5 vehicles that were damaged, and I think it was 2 that were totaled. Was it 2? It was 2. Yeah, so something like that happens mid-year. So if we don't have a budget, we may this year do something with a lease potentially, but really if we can do something to get out of that business sooner rather than later, that's really what we want to do. So for any department that has a situation such as that, just know that we are working on something and a policy, and I say the vehicle policy because we don't really have one right now. We have a vehicle purchase, but we don't have a policy. And the thing that has bothered me for years, and it's just never been done, and we've been working on it, is that we don't have a vehicle use policy other than like a sheet of paper that people fill out, and we do the driving record checks for employees that drive. But we don't have a use policy that is as detailed as it should be. Obviously, you can't use your cell phone when you're driving a vehicle. You can't smoke in a vehicle. I mean, we have a basic policy, but looking at other communities and the policies they have, that's where we should be going. Again, it's holding everybody accountable, and that's what this board is supposed to do. I know I've talked a lot today, and I apologize, but these are the things that we're pushing forward with, and policy updates will be longer as we move into the year.
Okay. Any questions about that? All righty, thank you. Moving on to item 15.
So committee appointments, this committee appoints, Land Bank is the one, and Claudine is gone right now. And what's the other that we do?
I know we put it back out,
Well, no, I know, but I'm thinking of the committees, Land Bank and,
Tri-County.
anyway, we put the advertisement back out to get a larger selection of individuals so that you have a better selection of applications to review. And this was done with the Public Works Human Services Committee as well as Chairman Drosha's committee. And so those are posted. So we will bring all of those appointments to the board, to each body in December for their review. So like in, Public Works, Human Services, you do have like Tri-County Office on Aging, you have the Road Commission, so a significant one, obviously. You have any Human Service committee or a board, and then they'll move those on to the board and you'll be able to listen to the individuals that want to come and speak, and that's what we've done in the past. And then somebody will make a recommendation or a motion to appoint someone, and then that would go to a vote. So that's where we're at right now. So December is your date to have those appointments all done.
And where does one find out what committees have vacancies?
So we have do you want to?
Logan?
Well, we have it on the website, where it's a citizen involvement application. Did it go on the front now? Is it, yeah.
Yes, sorry. Yeah.
It's,
Then we also, we pushed it out as well, so it's in the county journal.
and so we have had additional participation, whereas, and you'll hear this from every community, you can't always get people who want to either run for boards or be on some type of a committee because it's a time suck and, it's work, so.
I would just encourage those that make comments about their portion of the county that's not represented in some regard to take a look at these and perhaps step up and fill one of these seats from an area of the county that's not normally represented on these committees. So not to point a finger at anybody or any area, just get involved. So, all right. So what's our next step? Citizen involvement application. So we're all done with that. All right. We are down to item number 16, miscellaneous.
Thankfully, do not have any miscellaneous.
Miscellaneous, okay. Moving on to our bills, county bills.
They're in your packet.
Yep.
Do you have any questions? Approval?
Do we have a motion to approve the bills?
Commissioner Barber did.
Commissioner Barber? Okay, Commissioner Wright. Any discussion, questions, comments? Seeing none. All those in favor of paying the bills, say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Seeing none, we are moving on to item 18, limited public comment. Do anybody like to say anything before we adjourn our meeting? Certainly.
First of all, I'd like to thank the board for having that employee assistance program, because as we know, a lot of people face mental health challenges. I've had friends and family facing that. It looks like it's a very minor expense that I'm sure helps a lot of people. A lot of times I sit on a board, you don't get good comments. So that's a good comment. Good job on that. Also, as a District 1 resident, I'm glad that we have a representative here on the board again, and we're pleased about that in the district. Also, thank you for being sensitive to the townships and for approving this motion or this recommendation to extend the P&Z to June 30th. I had put August in my motion hoping for June. You got to overshoot. So my statement, I'm just glad that you are recommending to the full board to do that. Also, I encourage you to be sensitive and be equitable with the distribution of those extra funds you may have and to the townships, whether they decide to go on their own or they do the Joint Municipal Act. I think it would be fair to try to distribute those funds evenly, no matter which they decide. But thank you so much for giving them more time. It really doesn't affect me so much. We have our own zoning in Sunfield Village, but I know that they appreciate it, and thank you for being sensitive to that, because I know funds are scarce. So I appreciate what you guys do here today and always. So thanks for the good job.
Anyone else? All right, seeing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. And we are adjourned. Thank you.